Good evening, Final Fantasy IV Free Enterprise fans. My name is Grant, and it is my privilege to welcome you to the final race of the Potion Party segment of the Eblan Elixir League tournament. With me is an absolutely wonderful broadcasting team. Our engineer putting everything together is S. Grunt. Tracking all the items and trying not to eat the buttons is Ryudo. And, of course, my esteemed broadcast partner, the gentleman who loves Final Fantasy I and who put the S in S. Grunt, Sofnum. Sofnum, how are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty good here. It's great to be here. I am quite honored almost to have the privilege of broadcasting the final match, and we couldn't have rolled it up better because this is going to determine one of the two finalists who will come out of the Potion Party segment of our tournament undefeated.
Well, and that's interesting. So the final week of Potion Party, and you'll see this again when we move into the mixer portion in 4 weeks, but the final week we've been matching teams who are of similar records, and the two teams tonight, Flyeaglesfly is of course representing the Blue Moon Dew group, and Cecil is representing its Bacchus O'Clock Somewhere. Both of these teams are an undefeated 3-0 in tournament play, and not to give too much away, I highly recommend for those who have not seen Tree versus E-Ninja from yesterday to go check it out. It's an incredible race. The teams have split the races coming into tonight, so this is winner take all. This is going to determine one of the teams who enters the second half of the tournament at an undefeated 4-0.
And our restreamer tonight, S-Grant, has given them an Eddie to start.
Oh joy.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that in general, I think that Potion Party is probably a flag set that, among other things, is designed to accentuate Edward's utility. You have to do a lot of the stuff that he's good at, and you don't have to do a lot of the stuff that he's not so good at.
Well, to tell you the truth, I find Edward, of the three really fast heroes, to actually be one of the less difficult of them, because he has such a weird skill set in relation to other things, and you still have a lot of trouble getting him to anchor properly. He doesn't actually have weapons that'll slow him down like Edge or Kane will, but some of those niche strats he has are great for getting past some really obnoxious bosses. Even with the free bosses turned off in this set, he can still do interesting things to cheese his way through Plague, to get past Evil Wall, and I'm curious to see if any of our runners are going to employ those strats tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And I also find that, like, if you can find the spoon, which both of our runners will be on the lookout for, the spoon being a max attack weapon that we have made into a weapon that Edward can equip due to the funny line. If you can find a spoon that lives through its purpose without getting too stale, and our runners are off. Let's see who Edward is joined by on our final Potion Party. Rydia.
And a blue robe to hand us an Earth Hammer. This is actually a difficult start. This is team 90 hit points, and one of the absolute lowest totals you'll see at the start of the game. This is a very, very squishy group. So I would presume a lot of you watching have seen some of the Potion Party seed, but why don't you tell us often about some of the challenges of how this flag set is set up?
So, for those of you who are kind of new hanging by or have only kind of tangentially watched, Potion Party features a lot of flags that I would say in previous tournaments haven't quite been turned on. So we have K-Trap, which means that the trap chest can hold some of our key items. And we also have only gold pieces in non-trap chests. So you'll see our runners here, and we see Cecil going into Eblan immediately. And you'll notice that they're only ever going to get gold from chests, and that creates kind of a different sort of routing and configuration for our runners to get through as you solve those.
Well, and it's interesting because you're seeing two of the kind of competing mindsets that have emerged in this. There's the group that says, let's go straight to Eblan Castle, go get the loot because the best quality of loot is going to be there. It's how we get the most money in the shortest period of time. We do our best to dodge the trap chests, and then we go shopping for stuff. The other thing on Flyeagle's side is a little bit of a different strategy where we pop into places and we try and get a little bit of information. We may peek at the character inside Baron. The loot here is not necessarily as good, but it's right by where you start. It helps you get a little bit of your feet underneath you as you start the seed. So interesting choice. We're kind of curious to see how it pays off, because we have seen both of these areas have very, very good loot at times and have very terrible loot relatively at times as well. We also see our first white mage of the seed in a Porum, sitting in the Baron Inn, being guarded by at least an Octomam and one of their boss, which is currently hidden. Meanwhile, Cecil has found his first trap chest, but doesn't wait to see who it is before he resets out.
Yep, for sure. It is kind of sad here as you were talking about this hard start. Like, Porum would double our hit points right now if we were able to get through that fight, which we probably are not right now.
Either the twins would actually more than double them, because they start with 100 hit points apiece. Flyeagles continues the shopping tour and heads to Mist to take a look inside the shop. Mist is an interesting place to shop because there's a couple of very accessible chests that pay well, just like that 17 grand he picked up, but also no item shop to look at here. And he is Flyeaglesfly is taking a pretty deep dive into Rydia's house to go looking for treasure.
Yeah, you don't see, at least I don't see a ton of runners do this, but one of the things that the golden chests does is that it kind of like statistically averages your kind of looting, right? You can't turn 5 wind spears into a Gungar spear, but you can turn that much gold into a Gungar spears.
Well, I tell you, Flyeaglesfly likes him some Artemis arrows. I think he bought 180 of them there.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, Artemis arrows, best arrows in the game. Strong against dragon, if I remember right.
They are.
Yep, and can really get you through a lot of early things. And bow and arrow equipable by Eddie, and that Porum that's in a Baron waiting for us. So.
Yep. Well, Flyeagles, I think, is taking very much an approach of let's loot in the places we're going to go shop anyway and kind of see if we can save some time. Meanwhile, Cecil has finished his looting trip through Eblan and is getting ready to go check as well, and feels like peeking the character in Baron as well.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, based on these runners' approaches, we are going to see quite a bit of shopping before they go into a checks. If you're shopping, what are you looking for? What kind of items do you think that this party really needs to get off the ground?
I mean, the best thing that we could probably find would be an Artemis bow to go with those Artemis arrows, I would say.
I would say that's good, but I think I'd be more tempted if I came across a Stardust Rod.
Stardust Rod would be good too. I mean, why not both? You could come across either one. Stardust Rod will get you through a lot of early spots as well. I think I just had the arrows on the mind there. Let me see, what else? Glass hats. Glass hats would be great.
Well, crystal rings also, but I not to denigrate the Artemis bow. The Artemis bow is 10 agility bonus, which makes the character faster, in addition to being the best bow in the game. So it's a great way to boost a lot of damage. Meanwhile, with a little bit of overlapping checks, I'm curious to know if the runners are going to fully shop the overworld before they even attempt to go up Mount Hobbs. Again, this team is very, very, very squishy. Cecil finds Artemis arrows and buys some as well. Not quite as many as Flyeaglesfly did, but a decent number to get started. But with that number, I kind of get the sense 10 is a little bit on the low side, and I suspect that Cecil may be planning another trip to pick some up later.
Yeah, it looks like Flyeaglesfly is going to hit pretty much every single one of the absolutely free locations that we have on the overworld where you can get some money and just figure out what we can buy before we kind of get to buying it.
And Flyeaglesfly, go ahead.
Oh, and we have a Cecil asleep on Cecil's screen the bed.
Well, this flag set only permits 7 characters in the seed. Seeing that Cecil there is a very encouraging sign that the big guy with the big sword may be there. And speaking of glass hats, as mentioned by a couple of our streamers and by my Steam co-commentator, they are for sale inside of Kaipo, and Cecil has picked one up to protect his team. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly is raising the hovercraft, an interesting play. We are not necessarily going to need the hovercraft tonight. The 3 additional objectives we've rolled with this are to complete the Giant of Babel, go up the Tower of Zot, and burn down Village Mist with the package. But usually at some point you have to either go check the 2 chests on the hook route, or you have to turn in one of the tails.
Yeah,
to complete the seed.
Yeah, and it is a little bit of a cutscene. If I'm visiting Damsian, I would say that I always do it as well. And there's some chests there. You can get some gold. It saves you kind of in the early game.
Honestly, it's a fair enough gamble. It's really hard to critique that decision just with the likelihood it could be done. Flyeaglesfly knows where the most money is. He's headed for it. Well, the most money is usually in that private treasure. Without the earth crystal, we can't open it up. And of course, we're about 7 minutes in. We haven't even seen a look for another key item other than that starting earth hammer, which without a Sid is not the most useful of items.
No. And it looks like Cecil is going to at least peek the shops here within the within Fabul, and we're equipping Rydia, which makes me think that we might be on our way to see who's attacking Fabul today and what we can do about it.
It's possible. This could be quite the tricky fight just because of the amount of hitting that'll go on from this space. Even with that glass hat in the back row, it does not take a whole lot to send Eddie down to the floor. And of course, Rydia, there's a mute knife, wonderful weapon for an Edward. Also, if you happen to grab him out there, it's a wonderful weapon for a Cain.
Yeah, and one of the other things that would be nice to see, I don't know if you buy one, but definitely nice to see, is a dancing dagger, which you can use for a number of hit points that will get you through some early fights, especially if you have Rydia firing a bow and Eddie tossing the daggers.
Well, and as of yet, I have not seen what Edward's I have not seen what Rydia's starting weapon was. Edward had a short bow and I believe darkness arrows.
Rydia also had a bow and arrow, so she just
power shirts are very good for. Again, we've got all the kit to make a pretty good out the box spoon word here. I mean, the ideal item for him, of course, is adamant armor, and you will not see this in this flag set. However, if you wait till Tuesday, I get a sneaky suspicion you'll start seeing adamant armors again.
Yep. Adamant armor, the best armor in the game. Probably won't talk about it too much here. Not really applicable to the seed, but would kind of make some of these early checks possible for our runners here.
Well,
and we're going to check odds.
There is a way to get adamant armor in this seed.
Okay.
If you were not aware.
I don't think I am.
Well, you have to you probably want to get a couple sirens together, which won't be for sale, so you may need to find Edge to help you steal a few of them. You need to go up to the pink puff room, and you need to sit there and fight the pink puffs for that 1 in 64 drop that one of them will give you a pink tail. Of course, Free Enterprise has patched that to give you a direct adamant armor, and I think even with adamant armors off, you can still get one that way. However, the odds of picking one up during an actual competitive seed are pretty darn low.
Especially considering you'd have to pick it up in such a way that...
Well, speaking of mutants, there's Cain, and as our chat has pointed out, there are Avengers available for him. In Troya, should you want to drop the 150k, which frankly, I'm a huge fan of that strategy.
Yeah, definitely putting that Avenger on Cain is one of the best ways to go about the early game. Will get you through a lot of fights.
Unfortunately for Cecil, that Dark Knight's magic is a little bit too much for a lot of this party, and I think he's going to go look around a little bit elsewhere to get set up. In fact, he's going to head to Antlion Cave and see if he can find a boss that's a little bit less tricky to deal with, just to get some basic levels to get off the ground. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly finds one of the best value armors in this flag set. The black belts are over for sale in Mysidia, and samurai bows. That's actually a very nice pickup for this party.
Yeah, Samurai Bow pairs extremely nicely with that Artemis arrow, so...
Well, yeah, and it's not quite as wonderful as that Artie bow because it doesn't have the big agility bonus on it, but it also costs less than a quarter with the Artie bow cost. It is a very, very affordable item.
Yeah, and just, may make a lot of this actually possible. And we have an evil wall at the Antlion spot here, which seems to be having a little bit of trouble getting through Rydia's glass hat, which is good for us.
Yeah, well, of course, Edward's being risked on the front lines. He is pretty well armored right now as well, but frankly, it's not a huge loss should Edward go down. Seeing as we are playing with the Sea Hero, it doesn't matter if Edward survives the fight or not. He'll be credited experience regardless, so he can be the squishiest of all bards, and he'll still do pretty well.
Yeah, and it is for that reason I think that Edward is best. If you're going to run an Edward, he is best as your hero. Certainly helps getting him off the ground, so to speak.
Well, there is one other thing that you and I have not talked about. Ooh, ninja hats for sale in Agert, and Cecil threw that. But there's actually the most important shopping of all going on in the seed, which we have not seen show up yet. And that's that there is some angry dragon orb sitting somewhere guaranteed in an item shop. And that's going to actually be a very big deal with this party.
Ooh.
Sofnum, based on the Cecil screen, would you like to do the honors?
I guess. Are we still doing this? We can get underground.
I'm one of the few people who still does it. I think a lot of people feel it's played out, but by God, I do not let those memes go.
Yeah, I had to ask because it took me a second to remember what I was supposed to say. If I'm being quite honest here, but that's a spicy pickup because it's a free key item, and a lot more checks of shops now.
Right,
with S Wild on, those shops aren't, well, the shops are gated, but it doesn't matter because they're going to have kind of the same quality of equipment as the shops on the Underworld, but there's just more of them to check. And so maybe we will find angry dragons, as the community likes to call the Blarg, or a Leviathan Orb is pretty good. Will get you through a lot of stuff. And I'm trying to start calling it the Whoosh. So you have the Blarg and the Whoosh. But
well,
I don't know if that's going to work.
Flyeaglesfly taking the Magus Sisters fight in Cave Mist just to get some experience, get some health on the characters, and get them off the ground. With this kind of weak hit point start, that's almost necessary to get things done.
And a 33,000 chest in Mist is pretty good.
Well, you got the in T Wildish, the chests are rated for how accessible and how frequently people go to them. With this Cave Mist not being a required area for a key item, the chests can be quite good inside here.
Yeah, I mean, for that much time, getting almost 100 is pretty good. So
well, and it's interesting seeing the math in this. In a standard seed with restricted shops, like an S standard kind of setup, it's usually very valuable to get underground as quickly as possible because the shops are so much better. It's nice to have access to more shops, and it's a great reason to be underground, but it's not like there's an extra tier of gear that's going to be available down here you won't find anywhere else. And you kind of touched on that, but it's one of those interesting dynamics you see in this flag set for the fact that we have several things that are not used. And there is Big Bad Bahamut for sale in Kaipo. Flyeaglesfly has got it. I don't think there's sufficient mana on Rydia to cast it yet, but that will be coming fairly soon.
Yeah, I didn't see quite where Rydia got to, and both of our runners are so quick with their menuing, I'm just not catching it in the different flashes, but it does require 50 MP, I believe, to cast Bahamut.
Well, speaking of that, I would also say both of these runners do run a bit outside just the tournament matches. They are fun streamers on Twitch, and I would highly encourage you to check out each of their channels, spend the time and follow them. They're both fun watches, and I've been actually in both their streams in the last week. It's good times. They're good people.
Yeah, and I would also encourage everybody to, as you're doing that, consider following my fellow commentator Talgrant here, along with the engineer Askrant and our tracker Ryudo RPG.
That's right. Well, Ryudo is actually fairly new to the free enterprise community too, so a fun place to hang out and meet somebody that's kind of getting fresh eyes on the game and new flags as they go. I can't wait to see Ryudo. So, of course, for those of you who don't also follow Eskrut, a mad scientist who's created quite a few interesting flag sets out there. I think Edge vs. the Blue Planet is one of his. Looters Anonymous is one of my favorites. And I think he's got one or two things new cooking for this upcoming club season. And of course, Sofnum, I was watching today, and it's a fun stream, and it's a good time. So highly encourage y'all to check all that out. Well, we've had a little bit of walking around. Flyeaglesfly is going to take his shot at Kane. Meanwhile, Cecil's about to give us a look at the Fey March freebie, and it is the spoon.
Oh, that magma, that antlion play is going to end up being quite a play here, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, just base level Edward without a whole lot of gear is going to hit for 600 or 700 with that spoon. If you want to go ahead and throw in the strength bonus from having that power shirt and bandana, he's going to be doing quite a bit of work. Our first look at the Fey March bosses is a Sparkle and the Karate Man, which not end of the world bosses, provided that Sparkle is not Ogopogo, but definitely not something this party's ready for.
Oh yeah, certainly not. And don't remember exactly how much we've touched on it on this broadcast, but it's worth remembering too that the no free fly is on. So normally if you have a Paladin Cecil and you encounter the karate and you hit him after he's kicked you 3 times, the fight just ends, and so it's considered kind of a free boss. But in this flag set with the no free bosses flag on, the karate man will keep hitting you and keep kicking you, and you have to chew through all of Asura's points at that location.
The fame art's continuing to pay off with crystal rings for sale in the armor shop. Well, this is going to be quite interesting because we have 2 different approaches here. It looks like that Cecil is going to be pretty well set up to follow the spoon path through this. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly has the Bahamut path ready for Rydia as long as he can get through enough fights to get the levels on her to do things. And having picked up the cane through the Mount Hops fight, Flyeaglesfly's got a much better shot at being able to start making progress. It's really probably going to take Fubul plus 1 other fight to get Rydia able to cast Bahamut once, but for most of this overworld, 1 cast of Bahamut is all you're really going to need.
Yeah, and it doesn't, and actually just peeking here, it looks like the experience that we've accumulated has already got us to 1 Bahamut cast per fight, which is oftentimes on the blue planet all you need. So, we're going to look in Dwarf Castle and see what's for sale here. Almost assuredly not going to go take the fights. They're actually fairly high-level fights in the grand scheme of things.
Well, and again, there's just enough physical power here to make it make puff pastry out of these 2 characters. They are so low level and still so squishy.
Yeah, and we just don't have enough extra utility yet to really get through. But I didn't see Cecil buy anything, so I'm assuming there was not really much of note in those shops.
Well, I don't think Cecil went over and checked the item shop either, so it's interesting. I wonder if he's also on his trip through Kaipo spotted that Bahamut.
Yeah. I don't know what else you'd be shopping for, so I would hope so. And it looks like we are beelining it to. Oh, we're gonna try and get our cane here again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, again, keeping Rydia alive through the fight is the order of the day, because the cane is a prize, but the real prize is that experience to get Rydia up and start raising the mana count for her. Of course, we also have Eno experience, which means that only by taking bosses or by taking trap chests are you getting experience. Sirens will count for nothing. And unfortunately, I think Flyeagle's come to this fight without healing his party, which, based on his defensive gear, I think will be fine in here, but is always a little bit scary when it happens. Well, our friend Health used to be cool, but unfortunately he's changed.
Yep. Another boss that in a week you could cheese in this form if you had a coffin or some other way to apply the fatal effect to it, but can't hear. But got through all the hit points anyway. Earned Arcane. Probably got ready enough up to Blarg magic points, so. Both of our runners taking quite a different path through the seed, but both kind of seem to have ended up at a somewhat even spot.
Well, I'm curious what Flyeaglesfly is going to do with that bag to key, if it's something that's going to burn a hole in his pocket to where he has to check it out, or if he's going to continue working through his overworld plan. Meanwhile, Cecil is interested in that Porum. A white mage is wonderful, and I think he's hoping that the Spoon Word will be enough to get through here.
Yep.
Of course, we have an Octobam in the front, and I think that he's prepared for that, but what mystery lies behind it with a few more 1,000 hit points is yet to be seen.
Yeah, it's always kind of a gamble here. I mean, Octomam's in the front spot just is not that scary typically, but what's hiding is can be kind of scary.
Well, Edward's into making some sashimi out of that octopus, and we'll see our second boss. It is the Mist Dragon, an extremely valuable find.
Yeah, not too hard at early levels. Kind of where this location is now. There's a few hit points to get through, so it'll take a little bit. And already it bites it.
Not with Edward hitting for over 1,500. That's going to be 3 hits and maybe a single cycle fight. Leviathan for sale for Flyeaglesfly. Feels like the Bahamut's not enough, and we're going to get a little more utility. And Leviathan's not bad. It does a decent amount of damage and costs a little bit less in the mana department.
And I believe I saw in the chat somebody was saying that there was an Odin buy too. Odin being an instant kill effect that doesn't work on most bosses, but will work on the Fubul Gauntlet if we find it.
Yes, but even the few bosses that would normally work on are, of course, off because the Be No Free flag is on. Flyeaglesfly to give us our first look at the Fubul defense, and we will be defending Fubul today from Ooh, and Angry Valvalis. At these levels, this can be a problematic fight if you don't have a cane.
Yeah.
However, Flyeaglesfly has a rune. I would probably like to mention, I'm aware that the Blue Moon Dew team has at its core a group of Fantasy Star 4 players, rather, and it looks like Flyeaglesfly has decided to celebrate with that with his team naming convention tonight. Extreme value with Rydia's mother today. She has the Legend Sword. Well, do you want to talk a little bit about Supersmith tonight?
Sure. So the Legend Sword holds a lot of value for our runners today. Not only is it half of an objective, you can see the fifth objective down there, which is on every Potion Party flag set that is Forge the Legend Sword with the Adamant, so we have half of that already. But with the Sea Hero flag on, and you can see that Edward is our hero, we get an item often ported from one of the remakes of Final Fantasy IV for Edward specifically. My favorite, I don't actually know all of them off the top of my head, but my favorite you can get is the Requiem Harp, because it does a lot of damage and it also nerfs agility. So
then I think you and I have to agree to disagree. My favorite harp for Edward's the Loki harp, which I love because of the chaos it causes and the large number of items that it has strengths against. It does not have the penalty of agility, so you don't get to play anchor games with Edward. But if you're fighting endgame stuff, dragon bosses, whatever, machines, he just becomes an absolute monster on the battlefield. It's Loki loot, excuse me. Thank you, Scala Kitty. But yes, it is so good and so fun. But well, as I was going to complain earlier about it, we have Edge in the village, and of course CPU burning it down, seeing as Skynet has, of course, in this year become self-aware.
I mean, I kind of have to question how self-aware Skynet's been if, like, the first thing that we're going to burn down is Mist Village.
Well, you know, it's a technological hub that all of humanity has been growing out of. Plus, it's the future birthplace of John Connor.
Oh, well, I was not aware of that. I thought we just had a rogue summoner living here.
Well, right you are there, Softenham. Anyway, Flyeaglesfly has decided that Edge is worth sitting through the package cutscene and is going to wait while the mountains blow up from Titan's work and go through the work of getting the Edge out. In the meantime, Cecil's going to go take a peek at that Valvalis.
Yeah, and it is worth noting, too, that package is an objective, so once we get through it, we don't have to go get Edward now. We have the objective, but we probably will. Or not Edward, Edge. We probably will go get Edge.
I will point out, though, you can theoretically turn that package in at any time, but as soon as you've done this, you've committed to sit through the cutscene if you want to go use that sand ruby and wake Cecil up out of the bed.
Fair. I actually didn't think of that. I don't think it's ever happened to me in a seed, so it's worth noting.
I hate to tell you that it is unpleasant the first time you make that mistake. So best to tuck that one away and not be like poor Tall Grant, who learned by experience several times over.
Oh, I'm gonna have to learn by experience. It's the only way I learn. So I'll just laugh and think of this conversation when it happens.
But yeah.
And we have a turtle.
This is actually not a terrible place for the turtle, as opposed to, say, seeing him at the Mazamune altar. He is a lot less fun there.
Yes, he is. He is just cannot hold up to the play times of our ever-strengthening party here. We're kind of past the 90 hit points and kind of into the 700 hit point range here on our party, so that's great.
Well, unfortunately for those of you who are rooting for an unpleasant, that's what nasty bosses out of the way. Of course, we're all still keeping our watch open in the hopes that Dark Knight Cecil will occur somewhere both very fast and very hard-hitting.
And we find the Twin Harp, which is a key item check, but this week not in our list of quests that we have to fulfill. Given as the importance of this match, I would be surprised if anybody went and did this right now, although it is a bit lower level than some of the other checks we have open.
Well, of course, Twin Harp is also a huge crowd pleaser. We love hearing the randomized music. I think we're over 300 songs in the pool now for it, and all kinds of wonderful things in there. So we'll see what may pop up from this, and maybe one of our runners will fancy us with a tune a little bit later on. I think Flyeaglesfly is preparing to try and do that Baron Inn check. Meanwhile, Cecil getting his glimpse at the Edge, and I think also is probably going to sit through and take it. I mean, let's be honest. Edge is the only way to get Bacchus wine in this seed, other than getting a really lucky, weird trap chest roll.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is just confirmation bias or what, but it seems to throw edge weapons at you just constantly, whether or not you have them. So, yeah, definitely, we're always going to pick up an edge here. And Flyeaglesfly, again, not having any problems with Octomom here, just dispatching and finds the Mist Menace, or the Mist Dragon, or however we would like to describe her.
Well, it's
Prettiest
interesting.
mom.
Flyeaglesfly, unfortunately, will get to do the double dip trip to Mist, where there will be one trip to turn in the Rydia's mom to follow the trip to sit through the package. You always love to group those together, but it's really hard to ever get the feeling for if those two items are going to back up to each other. Because, as we all know, rando's going to rando, and you don't actually know where things are when you play.
Right. You can only make decisions based on the information you have, which makes... I would say that makes improvement harder, because it's always hard to know, did I do better? Or was the seed just new? And sometimes you know, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah, well, and sometimes you don't want to swing too far the other way, where you massively change your strategy because one really low odds thing just happened one time when you ran. But again, it's tempting. Sometimes you get a little tilted over those things.
Yeah, and I think it happens to everybody, consciously or subconsciously. You're gonna like maybe tend to do that check a little more often for a little while after the seed burns you real hard. But we have an edge and we have a Murasame. So, we're doing pretty well now.
Well, not only that, this party's setting up pretty well. We mentioned earlier the trickiness with Edward and his high agility. The other two very high agility characters in the game are not only in this seed, but were easily available and placed in the party. So this is going to solve a lot of the damage and anchoring kind of woes that you might have with some of the bosses, and set both of our runners up very, very well.
Yeah, and short of old men, we found at least potential for all the utility you tend to ask for in these seeds, right? We have a Black Mage, so we can do Warp and Piggy stats if we need to. We found our White Mage for Berserk and healing. We found our Spoon. We found another Melee. So we're just kind of going down the checklist here, making our ideal party with an Eddie start, really.
Well, Flyeaglesfly is again making his way through Eblan Castle, looking for the trap chests in here, which is again an important play in this flag set, seeing as K-Trap is on. As we noted earlier, it's interesting, Flyeaglesfly still has not used that Magna Key and is just kind of rolling with, I think, Rydia and the Bahamut, and not even aware that Spoonward is going to be a thing in the near future for him.
Yeah, and I mean, you got the Murasame out of Baron, and you have our Blarg already. You know, you're probably not... I mean, you're going to take Spoonward, obviously, but it's probably not factoring majorly into your routing right now.
Well, what is good for the Eagle is good for the Cecil. Cecil is high five as they start trying to empty out Eblan Castle for the trap chests. What do we think could be here in value? I think on a typical average seed, you'll see one key item out of Castle Eblan.
Yeah, I mean, the runners probably... Darkness is kind of the obvious answer to if you're trying to be friendly to the runners, what you'd want to see here. It would be interesting to see Adamant here. That's kind of... Or, yeah, and then the other key item that we're really kind of looking for is the Earth Crystal.
Well, Early Forge with Edward can be one of those game-breaking weapons that cuts the seed open. Of course, Spoon is kind of that already. Meanwhile, on the side, we're seeing great tricks with Kane using that Assassin Dagger and proccing Swoons. And in a heads-up play, Flyeaglesfly is also stealing Bacchus Wine. Meanwhile, on Cecil's side, you can just see how much damage a Spoon can do against a stale man.
Yeah. And, Cecil making sure that Porum is awake to gain all the experience here. Running that flame too. I think that's, you know, a super important part of Edge's utility early game, is not only if you find some good steel can he hit hard, but flame wipes a ton of encounters.
Well, and again, remembering the undead enemies will take damage from heal potions. Cecil makes a great play to just kind of clean up the damage with some characters that may not have otherwise been able to do it, and finds Darkness Crystal.
Wow. Ooh.
That is big value. Meanwhile, a Protect Ring shows up in the Mad Ogre chest on Fly Eagle side. We have not seen the Black Cat Lamia chest yet.
So, and that is extremely technically go mode. Because we have access to King and Queen, we have access to Cape Bahamut, we have access to the Giant, and Massimo now too.
Well, 31 minutes in with go mode, what do you do?
Panic.
Okay, yeah. After we finish panicking, then what should we do?
Yeah, I don't know, right? So it opens the question of the Giant, right? The Giant is not a runner's favorite check. There's 2 bosses. The bosses tend to be very hard. It's long. You do get a character out of it, but you don't get any key items, so it cannot lead to Zot or Forge for us. But it's definitely a play you can make.
Well, and not only that, the character comes after the very, very large chunk of experience that comes from doing the 2 fights inside the Giant. So not only do you have to work through these long, high hit point checks, which are going to be long, high hit point checks because the free bosses are off, but afterwards you find that character, and in the back of both of our runners' mind, they both know that there is a Cecil somewhere in this seed. That being said, neither of our runners has approached ordeals yet. I wonder if they're just going to fade it and let Cecil go.
Yeah, I mean, if you were gonna have a party and you didn't get a Cecil, and you have to keep Eddie, this is probably the party you'd want, I think, if Unique is on. Maybe swap a food, but
Porum's a white mage, and while Rosa is usually considered a better white mage, Porum does a good enough job. In this flag set, because of that Bahamut, Rydia is the best black mage in the game, and then the 2 Malays you got are the ones who can keep pace with your anchor. This is not a bad party as it stands.
no. And I mean, every encounter you take and every check that you make without Cecil in the party is just experience that Cecil's missing out on. There's no sirens. There's no XP from fights. You can't demachine grind. So we're getting further and further away from Cecil being viable. Now, there's plenty of experience in the seed for Cecil if they go and pick him up, but
well, I think probably the biggest plum that's out there right now is that Hairguard chest up on the moon is, I think, about 30,000 experience, and that's before any sort of multiplier for key items. I think we see Cecil right now with our leading key items has 6 of them and potentially a 7th as both runners are through. Ooh, more temptation to get that Cecil. There's the big hit and stick for him.
Okay, so you find the Crystal Sword. Let's say Cecil was available, because we've got a lot of character checks left. We have Eblan, Castle.
Yeah, the obvious one is there's a character sitting right up on the moon available for us to go look at for free right now, and I think Fly Eagles check that right now. Meanwhile, Cecil wants to go check key items. Rydia knows Warp. He's doing a bunch of damage. Let's go to Dwarf Castle. Yeah. Has either of our runners found camping gear, though?
I have not seen either of the runners buy camping gear, so
no, and
no.
I saw 3 tents in Cecil's inventory, so that's actually a fairly big ask, especially because there's a pot of dwarven drinking fluid right next door.
Yes, but it takes you a while. You gotta get in your ship, go over there. You have to talk to the bathroom attendant. It's cool.
Yeah, but he gives you all the mana in the world that you want back, and he doesn't eat your tent that you can use in the lunar subterrane when you have to unpleasant things like the Mazamune altar. Well, meanwhile, we see a dancing Mylon, but did Mylon bring his friends to the party?
I don't know. We'll have to find out. It'll be interesting. We haven't seen another blue robe yet either, have we?
No, just the one. And
just the one.
So the identity remains shrouded. Meanwhile, Fly Eagles is content raising the hovercraft, but has decided to go shopping before he goes anywhere else with it. It is indeed Mylon Zed, the big guy by himself, and he's not actually the scariest boss in this location. I think he's about to have a bad time.
Yeah, this location tends to have a lot of meat to it, because this is where you normally encounter the dogs or Calbrina in the vanilla game. So the hit points is a little bit high, but I think that we'll be fine getting through here. But you know what looks really good against Mylon Z? A Crystal Sword.
Yeah, but only one character in the game can use a Crystal Sword, and where could we find such a... Why am I asking you?
I don't know. I mean, we checked where it's supposed to be, right? And we only got like a key of some sort.
This is true. Flyeaglesfly is going to go pick up some glass hats. I think this is moon preparation. I think Flyeaglesfly is actually going to go do something fairly brave and try something like Cape Bahamut. I mean, this is a fairly strong defensive play.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that happening. Especially, I mean, if what you've determined the next step to be is you're going to go check the moon, see if it's your Cecil, see if it's a food, or not a food, you can't food this, but a character that you want, which should pretty much be Cecil.
Well, speaking of finding a Cecil, Cecil has found Cecil. Thinking about thinks the better of losing the warp and decides to get rid of the Dragoon instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the play. I think you need access to warp, and Blarg's always nice to have too.
Look, I'm the biggest Kane fanboy in the community, and sadly, this is the right play. With this party and this setup, and with what you found for weapons, this is where you want to go. I mean, you've got Edge basically sitting in endgame gear doing ninja things. He's plenty speedy. Kane needs a whole bunch of other stuff to really get him off the ground, like that 150k for an Avenger. You've got a Crystal Sword for Cecil. Might as well do it and take the time to go up ordeals. Cecil getting paid out in spades for making this character check.
Yeah. Well, and there's still possibly 2 items. Radiant gets warped pretty early, so I'm pretty sure we already have it, and we can get both this item and the item out of the sealed cave.
Well, both of our runners have decided they are not interested in checking that moon character. Flyeaglesfly making his way down underground.
Yeah, I think this makes sense as a play. I mean, as a conservative play. You're going to have easier checks underground. There's 2 free checks down there, you know? I mean, you're still looking for a couple items that get you objectives, even though we know that we are in technical go mode.
Well, the other thing is that there's a lot of ways to go down here and potentially get levels, get experience, and look for things, but I think that this, like you mentioned before, the Giant is a real unappealing check. There's large amounts of hit points to chew through. Some of the bosses can hit really hard in there. It can be very lengthy. And this may be an attempt on both of our runners' part to find say, an Earth Crystal or the other half of Forge and get themselves out of having to go through the Giant. Well, we'll see our first key item check on Cecil's side after their crystal. A great crystal. We have 2 out of 3 crystals, but there's one more we need to do an objective.
Yep, and we have found the 3rd best crystal in the game. So, you know, that also makes it the worst. But...
And a Luca key, which is not terribly helpful in this flag set, seeing as we're going to get the item out of that area. Of course, if we hadn't seen Demas, there might still be some value down there, but not really. Not anymore.
Yeah, and you're probably, I mean, it's probably not correct to go check it anyway, even if Demas is out there, but a little bit of vanilla here from Escron, because it is called the Luca key, because it is around Luca's neck, so...
Well, Cecil, I believe, is headed for Mount Ordeals and to get a fully online and operational battle Cecil. Yep.
And doing it in this order, you know, we're gonna probably, I should say, make short work of whatever's up here. Definitely outpacing Seeds. And I feel like a lot of times if you're in a close race, the number of things you can do that are far away from your current level either way is probably going to determine whether or not you can bring home the victory.
Well, I think you're going to see Flyeaglesfly drop everything Cecil to do Mount Ordeals as well. I'm kind of curious because Flyeaglesfly still hasn't been down inside the Fey March, hasn't checked the freebie, and may be somewhat close enough shape to actually take on the bosses when he goes down there. But I think Cecil has a little bit of a lead at the moment.
Yeah, I think it depends. But yeah, I would say Cecil's a little bit ahead. Probably just some of that early game looting is going to be the difference between our 2 runners, but it's definitely still either one's game. A lucky check or just good execution can bring either of them ahead here.
Well, we have some more information about Baron Inn. We have a blue robe for Cecil in the first spot up on Ordeals, and that's the Water Hag. Water Hag in the normal Free Enterprise game is a free fight, but here you have to shoot through the hit points, even though you get to watch the full cutscene with Ayana. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly is doing unpleasant things for that Mylon Z, and I think Mylon Z's having has just had a second unhappy party with our runners.
Yeah, Mylon Z just not putting up much of a fight.
I think it's the last race of this segment of the tournament. He phoned it in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's going to appear here, but what I'm interested in is to see what kind of shape Zaramis and Fu are going to be in, since they are excluded from these seeds for us for the time being.
Well, I mean, next time, don't go look in the deep ravine for Mylon. You can go look in this shallow ditch. That's where he got left behind.
So we find our Kaipo guards here at the Mylon Z spot, attacking backwards. No fun effects here, unfortunately.
Yeah, our Yang, who likes to kick around the world, is actually hanging out in the Famar these days. But Edge is going to do a little fire things and make quick work of this. Of course, the officer is still as big a coward as he's always been, and he will flee this fight, despite the fact that bosses aren't supposed to be free. He's just that big of a chicken.
Yeah, but he doesn't even get a chance to run away because a timely Sylph decides to take care of him for us.
A very nice pickup on Cecil's side to grab that to, I guess, boost the healing ability of this party as well. Well, in the meantime, Cecil makes a save of great prudence to see what's in this fight. We haven't seen somebody like Wyvern, and since the underground access was provided elsewhere, the safety checks are generally going to be off. I don't think at these levels that Edward's going to have a huge problem, especially with the spoon, but you never know. Sometimes you'll get like a Globe 199 Wyvern in here, and it's not pleasant.
Right. Yeah, but we've seen a couple of the bosses who are unpleasant here. Like Valvalis is rough here for one character, and Dark Elf can actually be a bit of a bother along with Ruby.
And a Baron key in place for Cecil. D's Lunars.
Yeah.
These dead Lunars.
Yeah. The D Lunars split the hit points here, so most characters just do not have that huge problem with them, and neither does Eddie with this.
Well, and I mentioned one of Eddie's big virtues is his speed, and that certainly played in this fight as the Lunar Dragons didn't get a turn. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly is through the Dwarf Castle check, and has got his Cecil in hand and is collecting his Luca key and Crystal. In the meantime, Cecil has an interesting choice as the Baron key was awarded, and we all happen to know who the first boss is there.
Yep. And I don't know that Town of Baron... I don't know. Would you check the Town of Baron here? I can't imagine it holds a ton of value. You get another character check, but...
To tell you the truth, in this flag set, I don't like checking Baron Castle. And I don't like it because even under the best of circumstances, with all the walking, it's a 4-minute check. It leads to a character, which this party is pretty well charactered out. It's going to lead to a single key item. The Baron Basement is not a helpful check because K Summon is off. And with the amount of time that you could spend doing that, you could have checked at half the tower, and maybe even more of it. So it's not my favorite check. And then if that's not enough on there, it's not going to be difficult, but it's going to be time consuming that we know that the All Gauntlet is sitting there. So no, I don't think I like the Baron check, but I've also been burned because my opponent doesn't always mind checking Baron and has found value there before.
Yep. I mean, that's always sort of the rando play you're going to make. I would agree with you on balance that the odds would say it's probably not worth the time you're going to put in it.
Interesting choice on Flyeagle's side. He has decided not to take the Cecil. We're going to commit to the fate of Ordeals. And I think he's about to be very happy to find that spoon, because that's about the next best thing to having Crystal Sword Cecil is having that spoon word.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting play to make without knowing that the spoon is just sitting in the frame arch for free for you. But I think saving the Ordeals time may make a huge difference here.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Baron Key is going to hold value. Well, Softenum, we have seen 6 of the 7 characters in this flag set, and it looks like Cecil's making his way up to the moon. We should be seeing the 7th character. Who, in your opinion, would be the best person we could see if we see a brand new 7th character up there?
I'm just gonna go out a limb here. I don't think you take anybody. I don't think you take a Rosa. You definitely don't take Palom. You don't take. Old Man has lost a lot of his utility. You may take Tella, but I don't know who you'd replace.
Well, what about Karate Man Yon or perennial Final Fantasy favorite Sid?
No. I mean, we have better Sid. His name is Kane.
Well,
Yang is bad Sid, and Sid is bad Kane, and Kane is bad Cecil.
All right, I am writing this down for my transitive property of Sids.
Yeah, I mean it's just the rule of Sid inequality.
All right. Speaking of Yang, there are cat claws for sale in the Fey March, which Fly Eagles wisely passes on. But yeah, I think both of our runners are set in their parties. I don't think you're going to find a new character that's going to be worth taking for any of them. Cecil is now again taking the alerts. They're not a ton of experience, but Edward can one-shot them. And the odds of these 4 alerts are a little bit less than most of the other trap chests in the K main, but they're fairly fast. And Cecil, I think, is just looking for low-hanging fruit. Pun intended with our apple that he found.
Yep. Yeah.
But it may be the realization coming that the giant may be a thing.
I mean, if you can make it through, so we're traveling to the moon, and I did have a thought while we were kind of talking about it, and I don't think this is the right play, but I think a defensible play is replacing Rydia with Rosa if you have that opportunity, because having the 2 Berserk casters and having 2 white mages later in the seed is helpful. And you no longer have to get over the hump of not having a black mage early.
I respectfully disagree on that, though, because having warp is useful for certain places, but even more than that, that Bahamut cast is such a game changer, especially if you come across an area type boss that you have to fight. Of course, only one of our runners knows Bahamut right now, so maybe that would make more sense to do for somebody like Softenum than it would, for Cecil rather than Flyeaglesfly.
Yeah, I still think the correct play would be to take that one, but I could see an argument to be made that I would probably go along with, that maybe what you want to do is replace Rydia. I don't know, though. Some people really dislike Rydia. She gets nuked really late, but I don't think that matters.
Honestly, it's one of the more interesting things I've seen in this flag set has been how useful and popular Rydia has been, because she is almost always that kind of second fiddle black mage behind Palom, who gets Quake so early, who gets Virus so early, who gets so many things earlier than she does, and the only compensation for it tends to be that early warp. And unfortunately, Flyeaglesfly has just the king spot is a nasty, unpleasant Ogopogo, and was queuing up the Bahamut. Ogopogo doesn't like summons very well. Cecil has checked the hairdryer chest, gained a large amount of experience, and discovered a samurai bow for his trouble. So not quite the big payout you're hoping for, but I think we're going to see Cecil attempt a lunar check here.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I mean, not having to fight Zaramas and not having K-Moon on so that you're not really forced to do that many of the boon fights, I think that the characters change relative weighting quite a bit. I think Rydia is much better.
Well, unfortunately, our Go mode has been a bit interrupted. I had mentioned that there were 3 unpleasant bosses. We've taken Kenatsu off the list. That spot for Ogo is one of the bad ones because it has a lot of hit points and it does a lot of damage when you go through it. It's one where you have to be able to do some big healing to keep up with it, and our runners just are not in that shape right now.
No, yeah, that's gonna be rough, and you're definitely looking for a way around it. The question is, does it become your last, or Dark Imps?
Well, there are worse fights here, but this is a very, very hard-hitting fight. This is a very strong attacking spot, and there are 3 of these dark imps, so they are going to be putting quite a bit of punishment to the party. In fact, Cecil, I think, recognizes that and decides that he's going to wait a little bit to do this. So for as early as we've gotten go mode, we've been in go mode for nearly 20 minutes right now, and unfortunately, the seed is looking pretty scary.
Yeah. We definitely have the seed kind of closing in around us, as tends to happen in sort of what I would call the middle game of the potion party seeds, is you kind of start exhausting your checks that don't lead anywhere, and you kind of head into some really unpleasant decisions to make.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing on Cecil's side, right? 9 key items. I think he's looking for that last one, and then he's going to start thinking about, well, maybe I can go just peek and see if Giant 1 is doable. Maybe I'll get lucky and King Queen Eblan's going to be there. But that jump in experience from when you get from that 9 to 10 key items and the experience doubles can be such a big deal, and is going to impact so much. And we're not quite as far along on Flyeagle's side, as I think he's currently sitting at 7 key items. I don't think that he's picked up that Baron key off of Ordeals, and he of course hasn't found the Twin Harp.
And on Cecil's side, I think we accidentally bought a Protector in there, since Cecil already had one, but found them for sale in Tomra.
But I say this does make for exciting viewership for us in the public. Speaking of which, for those of you who are turning in, maybe time we're watching for Enterprise for a little while. If you're liking this, we would highly encourage you to go check out the Free Enterprise Discord. It's where you can find out information about the game, talk to runners who do things, and actually get involved in playing yourself. It's one of the best communities on the internet. We'd love to have you come race and play with us. It is a heck of a lot of fun to do, and I really can't say enough good things. I know that I think just about all of us here came in at some point through that and have just found a community that is full of happiness and wonderfulness.
Yeah, I've actually been in the Free Enterprise community for way longer than my skills would betray. But
No,
it is...
Haven't we all?
Yeah. People...
except maybe Ryudo.
Yeah. People like to say all the communities are the best community in the internet unless you play League of Legends. But we really mean it here. Everybody is inviting. If you ask a question in the newbie channel, you'll usually get 2 or 3 answers, and then you'll set 2 people into a debate over edge cases around your answer. So it is a really welcoming, great community.
Yeah, and I don't mean to throw shade at Ryudo. In fact, I am shocked at how good the times he's been putting up with when he's throwing his first ever actual Dream Seed. It's pretty dang impressive. Anyway, Cecil out looking for a little bit more, I don't know if it's just going to be experience or trying to find something to help him with the seed. Of course, I don't think Cecil has formally investigated the Ogo Pogo. That remains an unpleasant surprise waiting for him. But we're going to take a look at the warrior chest and see what comes up. Again, this is a spot where having a big summon on Radiant would probably make a huge difference in how this fight's going. I think Edward is looking almost unhittable and will eventually carry this by himself. But I think as a runner, you'd love to have more of the characters carry through it, especially that Cecil.
Yeah, and what you might do is you may get down to 1 and then try and bring everybody up to... although, oh yeah, we're going to stop them.
Meanwhile, yep. Eagles, spikes a rat tail, not terribly useful until we find a hook, but could have good value behind it. And a mom sitting on top of tower for Flyeaglesfly. So I don't think this is going to be a terrible check for him, but it's going to take a little extra time due to the extra hit points.
Yep. But a good play to make here anyway. We'll have to see what we get out of this and what the warrior chest holds for us. I think that the warrior chest is a good kind of tipping point in these seeds, because very often has an item, but what it is often deterministic. It's one of the easier chests to fight, in my opinion, in the middle game.
And especially there, of course, a Dragoon Spear, which is going to be very helpful for Flyeagles. Check it, but not so good for Cecil, who has let Kane go.
Yep.
And that Dragoon Spear could be a big thing. You know, earlier I said I thought Cecil... just the way that the checks are starting to play out here, there's a whole lot up in the air. We've got a really interesting race here. And again, as a reminder for those of you who joined us late, these are two undefeated teams that have split 1-1 in the tournament. This is the race to remain undefeated and be one of the top teams in the tournament. So there's an awful lot at stake and a lot of pressure on our runners tonight.
Yeah, I expect that we'll get some, some great plays here as we kind of lead up to it. For those of you who are a little bit newer, this is a team tournament format. So out of the 4 players on a team, 3 of them play a week and you play a different team. And then that's kind of like a best of 3 thing. So they've split the previous games 1-1, and we cannot ask for a better send-off to the Potion Party flags here, I think.
Well, yes, we can. That's what we want to put that Dark Knight Cecil on the Mazamune altar.
That might still happen.
That's still. I'm asking for it right now. I'm sure our runners don't want it, but from an entertainment standpoint of a commentator, I want to see it. Artemis bow for Flyeaglesfly on top of tower. To answer one other question from chat, the Dragoon Lance is technically a weaker weapon than the defense sword that Kane has equipped on Flyeagle's side Fly right now. However, that Dragoon Lance does quadruple damage against some dragon bosses, and so we haven't seen things like Bahamut or, say, Wyvern or Pale Dim, I think. So those are all bosses where if that item is available, Flyeaglesfly could have a significantly faster check with Kane than even Crystal Sword Cecil might have.
And it looks like Cecil's decided we might be ready for karate.
And my apologies, Lord Goober has corrected me. Bahamut is technically not a dragon, and for those of you who score at home, neither is D-Mist. The D in D-Mist does not stand for dragon. But this is a podcast tonight about having letters and not knowing exactly what they stand for.
I know, just like Escarant, which I'm still convinced the S stands for rockets. But
that seems as reasonable as anything I've heard before.
Yeah. I'm gonna let that. And Escarant always tells me that it does not indeed stand for rockets. I still think it does.
No, Charizard just a disobedient Pokemon who never listens to Ash. Cecil has decided to take his luck in the Feymark with a very speedy Karate Man, and I think the hits out of him are not doing terrible damage, but it's the kicks that are ignoring some of the armor. But you can see that Edward is tanking a full hit for only 30 damage. Again, it's going to be kind of a race against how fast the kicks can get Edward down, but there's a lot of damage being thrown at Karate, and there's only 24,000 health here.
Yeah, and so 12 turns goes by quicker than you might think, especially when half of the party is on the ground. But it looks like we have stabilized and we will be able to get through this.
Well, honestly, it's going to be the Edward and Cecil show for this team, and that group may be good enough. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly wants to go take a look and see what's on the moon today.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what...
But I think with the healing potion Cecil has dropped through, I think he will be through this fight.
Yeah, I think we're yep. And our Karate Man goes down, and Cecil is ahead in objectives now 2-1.
Well, Cecil there's a defense sword, which would be great for somebody like Kane, who has been let go from the party. Of course, Kane is still available for those of you who have never grabbed a rejected character before. You can go to Mysidia, step back in their crystal room, and all the characters you have missed out on will be waiting there. Of course, unless S-Spy has been turned on, in which case, when you chose not to take them, they said see you and went and found another game.
And the other thing that happens there is if you did not disarm them when they left the party, they have their items back on them. So if you forgot to pull off like a Zeus gauntlet or something, you can go get it.
You sound like a man who may have accidentally left an adamant armor behind before.
I've never played a flag where adamant armors are on, but, well, that's not true. I've never had an adamant armor, but yeah, I've left things behind before.
You poor person. You are about to have an enriching experience in the next section of the tournament.
Even I've started practicing, still haven't seen them, which is fine. You don't need them. They're fine.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the fun things that's coming up in the new Moonveil Mixer is that just turning in the pink tail yields an adamant armor, and that's a lot of fun. Speaking of things that are not fun, though, Cecil has discovered that Ogo Pogo and has decided to give it a shot. Again, Ogopogo cycles through doing a wave attack that does quarter hit points damage to each character in the party, and then one that does half damage. And I think he actually leads with the half damage one. And of course, he's extremely punchy here, which is going to make this a very, very difficult fight. And with the large number of hit points he has, the fairly high speed, I think 53 agility here, and the fact that he will unpleasantly respond should you try to summon Bahamut against him, he is just an unpleasant fight in that location. In fact, I'm not sure there's a worse spot for him in this flag set.
He's really bad there. I don't know how this compares to some of those wooden spots, but it's definitely comparable.
I think it's slightly faster than Mazamune Altar, frankly.
That's kind of that's the other place I was thinking I wouldn't want to see. But
well, Flyeaglesfly going to take his first shot in Cave Bahamut and see if we can get some parity and objectives here, and objectives completed here. Sees the Dark Imps. And looks like he's willing to give it a shot. Again, this is going to be a really punchy spot. One of the things the randomizer does is it takes the host spot of the boss. In this case, it would be Bahamut. This is Bahamut's vanilla location, and inherits their stats. The developers, in their infinite wisdom, decided to give this Bahamut spot a pretty high attack power, seeing as Bahamut's never going to physically attack. And as you can see, that Edward, who is, I think, got a glass hat on, is still getting hit for 1,000 damage. This is, I think, to win this fight, you kind of have to get blinks up very early just to make sure you can survive through the punches, and there's an awful lot of them. Meanwhile, Cecil says the Alt Gauntlet is no problem and is on his way to the Baron check.
Yeah, I admit this is, at where Cecil is, this is probably a play that I think is good. I don't want to do the Giant. It might be faster, but we still don't have a party. I don't think that can quite get through it.
Honestly, it depends on who the bosses are, but Blink with Porum is quite powerful, and if you get, like I said, there could be a very easy boss sitting in Giant 1, something like, Bahamut is fairly simple, you just need to use your Star Veils. King Queen Eblan cast a fairly weak Fire 2 at you. Those are both doable things that we have not seen yet. Eagle's going to give it a second shot for Cave Bahamut, see if we have a little bit better plan here. But for a seed that gave go mode at 30 minutes in, this has got to be feeling a little bit terrifying, because you've got to be feeling that your opponent also got into go mode pretty quickly. Yeah,
if you're the sort of runner who thinks about, where did my opponent go, how far behind am I, you can imagine a situation where somebody right-ordered everything here, but our runners have been pretty much checking the same things, just in a different order here.
Well, that pressure is here, though, because both of our runners have bounced off of several different checks. In fact, Cecil, I think, may have discovered that Alt Gauntlet's a little more than he wants to sit through, and is instead maybe opt for the tower.
Yeah, and possibly didn't put it together in the nerves that was definitely going to be the Alt Gauntlet.
Well, we see the first of the blinks are off here to get Rydia up so she can cast in Bahamut here. Again, it's really interesting to see this frame out as a Cecil versus. That's actually really exciting here. Based on this, though, we're going to be looking at several Rydia casts in order to get through this fight, and I'm not sure that with Forum going down, it's going to be a safe fight here. This is actually starting to look a little bit hair-raising.
Yeah, this is not going to be super duper pleasant. We didn't even manage to get through one of the there.
Just a really hard hitting spot, and with 3 of them there, it's to kind of feel like that with lack of health, with the health split 3 ways, it would make the check better. Flyeaglesfly has decided that enough is enough, and we're going to go peek and see what's on the Giant. Of course, the other advantage of Giant, there is a very accessible and very doable last arm chest on the way down. Or way up, so they say.
Yeah. So the last arm chest being, there's a trap test in the Giant, which probably holds a key item. This is also a character check, though, as we discussed before. Probably not taking anybody we find here. I'll be interested to see what the bosses up here are, though, because there's a lot of people we want to see, and there's a lot of people we don't still left in the pool, so.
I think the only thing we could see in here that's going to be worse than that the Fey March would be if that first spot has Dark Knight Cecil in it. I just don't think that this party is well set up to handle the amount of that, especially with how late Forum gets Cure 4.
Yeah, I think that DKC first spot would be pretty impossible here, so that's of course why we're going to see it here, and our winners are going to be a little bit stuck maybe doing some non-incentivized spots for a while.
Well, Cecil finding that rat tail on the Tower of Lower Babel. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly diligently looking for that last arm chest on the way to the first giant check.
Yeah,
And I think we are going to see Cecil take the Mom Bomb fight up here. Again, I think with Crystal Sword, Cecil is going to be even less of a challenge for him than it was for Flyeaglesfly.
yeah. I mean, this is. I'm pretty sure the top tower here, short of a few bosses, is just a speed bump to Cecil at this point.
And as Chad has pointed out, that rat tail represents the 10th key item for Cecil, who will be earning double experience for the rest of the seed.
And there is last arm.
Well, so maybe here you want to see that other half of Ford. That could be game-changing to find.
I mean, if you can fade that Ogo or those Dark Imps or both possibly, that would be great.
I think, well, that's the thing, is that if this giant doesn't pan out, there are 3 all checks that you have to deal with, let alone the fact that we haven't seen who's down the Mazamune altar yet.
Yeah.
So it's again finding a bunch of unpleasant roadblocks along the way.
Yeah, or the option of having to dig out the last few remaining key items out of the various places they exist. I mean, there's probably...
Well, let's come out and say it. It's doing the length of time awful check down in Sylph Cave.
Yeah, I was trying not to go there, but yes, probably
well, I think
Sylph Cave is...
Our runners are also trying not to go there.
I think that... Oh, wow! We have a vanilla elements here at Giant.
Well, that's Grunt saying your Sunday should have vanilla ice cream. At least that's what the S is for. And Flyeaglesfly going to do what I think is going to be a somewhat manageable elements fight. Of course, not if the Mylon form keeps hitting like that, then this could be a little bit awful. But if you get past this, the Rubicant form's magic is going to be pretty weak here. But getting out of this first phase of the elements fight, I believe, is going to be in the order of about 15,000 damage.
Yeah, and I don't know that Flyeaglesfly really has the hit. I mean, Eddie's going to have to be able to tank one hit to get through that.
I think this means you do everything you can. You know, this is where I think play. You want to do something to get Porum going first. And in fact, you see Flyeaglesfly sticking Porum in the central slot for that reason. You got to get that blink off. If you can get that blink going and let Eddie take 2 or 3 swings, this fight suddenly becomes a lot more doable. And in fact, even more with the Artemis Bow, another 10 agility to stack on top of Porum to try and help her to go first.
And I see an interesting play here on Cecil's side. We're gonna see some music and see what key item that the Cave Magus is holding.
Well, I think both our runners have run into some interesting blocks now, and the real test of skill is going to be to see who the first one who's going to break through, who's going to make a major breakthrough is going to be. Whether it's Cecil, who's out hunting to find that key item to lessen some of the objective burden, or Flyeagles trying to get through that one check, because this does represent 100,000 experience and a pretty significant power jump for Flyeagles if he can get through it.
So, for those of you who are newer to the randomizer, several members of the community, preeminently Xenocat, who's in chat here, have composed and arranged lots of different video game music themes and everything else from across pop culture, and into over 400 songs for us to enjoy here as Edward will play us a nice little tune here. So as soon as Dark Elf is here done being angry, we will get to hear the beautiful music.
Well, with DJ Spoonie B coming up, I think Softenham and I are going to take a brief break from comms, get ourselves a nice little music. So have fun with our bard tonight. And that was the forest theme from Tetris Attack. Wonderful piece of music there. And of course, we don't need instructions to know how to rock.
Oh, and we have an Earth Crystal, which is an objective.
Cecil is paid out for his persistence and making the check. It's interesting to see. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly actually works his way through the first segment of the fight against Rubicon, of the fight against elements rather, gets to the Rubicon form, but unfortunately it's just a little bit too fast and a little bit too much damage, and Flyeaglesfly is going to have to go regroup a bit. But meanwhile, this helps Cecil out in some ways. It gives them one of their objectives to make. However, we still have 3 unpleasant things to deal with, and there are still challenges ahead.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how our runners deal with those 3 very difficult things, and which one they decide to fade kind of probably varies on party and equipment setup.
Well, if I may point one thing out, I still don't think that Lunar Dais character has been checked. Seeing these hard-hitting bosses and the necessity to blink, maybe you do take Rosa now. Maybe that's a huge thing. Maybe you even take Tella.
Yeah.
I mean, having that second blink caster might be a huge deal here.
Yeah, because you're never... So, I don't think we've said this explicitly, but J-Atoms are off, and so you will not find illusions in the shop. So
no, you have to get very lucky in a trap chest to find them, and there's key items waiting to displace them as well.
Yeah.
Updog only having a lunar staff tonight, so we can wave goodbye. This is probably the last time. Well, I don't know if we'll be seeing. I think one of the big beneficiaries of this flag set is going to be that flame dog chest on Zot. I think it was a neglected trap chest. It got ignored a bunch, and I think after how many times it's held value in this flag set, there are going to be a lot of runners who are looking at it. I've already been hearing from several friends who have done mixer seeds and been discovering adamant armor in that location. So it's another one of those interesting, how much do I want to play the odds for it kind of spots.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Zot is pretty highly weighted for treasure anyway, just because people tend not to do it. So it may be worth it going up. If you're going to come up here anyway, you obviously wouldn't do it just for that. But...
Well, I will tell you that I usually didn't even think about that upper left chest, but that's barely out of your way to pick up on the way up there, and it's probably going to be a revised route if I'm in Zot and looting.
Yeah, I mean... I think we will see a lot less reluctance to just kind of make our way through trap chests after this tournament for sure.
Well,
since we've all had to learn the strats to get through them.
Well, and for those of you who haven't done it, if you enjoyed your K-Trap here, I would highly recommend checking out some of our clubs when club season starts up. I know that probably the most famous of the K-Trap clubs is Troy and Tango. That's a cooperative club. It's an awful lot of fun to play in. Of course, there are several others out there like Lit 3 that do them. I get the sense that Escrunt may have something planned, but I don't want to tip too many hands about that either. That I don't know too many specific details for it. Cecil being not seeing the 7th character, and instead seeing a vanilla cane hanging out up on Zot. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly heading down to the Fey March, probably going to take at least a crack at the Karate Man down here. I don't know if Flyeagles is going to feel confident enough to try and play Ogopogo games.
Yeah, maybe Flyeaglesfly is of the mindset that we just kind of try that, but maybe not. And we just have a Palom here who's probably not going to make the cut.
Well, yeah. So if you had Palom on your character card, that's who's there, and I don't think we'll be seeing him appear in any party today. Quack Kid will be back in full force next week, and he will be rocking the ground as he likes to do. But in this flag set, Rudy just tends to override him.
Yep. Probably will end up back on top of the Black Mage stack. Well, under food, but everybody's under food.
Well, and there we have our Angry Dragon in what doesn't look terribly threatening in Zot 2 today.
No, not yet. I don't think it's gotten to do anything yet.
Wyvern is notoriously slow, and
we don't know what Wyvern has.
Mystery burn then.
Oh, somebody in chat saying that Wyvern did indeed cast Ray. I just missed it.
So Wyvern apparently closet Ghostbusters fan, as are we all.
I think Wyvern must have. I mean, I guess Wyvern's coming back. Wyvern must have missed the memo that it was a big day.
Well, the joy of Bahamut, you can see Flyeaglesfly how much more quickly the Warrior's Chest went, and that's the trade-off for having that versus the beefiness that is single target Crystal Sword Cecil. But unfortunately for Fly Eagles, we know that there is not really a value inside that Warrior's Chest, and again, you have to work a little harder for the supper. We have a pan for Cecil for his trouble, which is actually going to open up another check, which frankly, have we seen the runners do Sheila 1 yet?
Now that you mentioned that, if we have, Cecil did apparently. I don't remember what it was. It must not have been that memorable. So we got a ninja shirt and a massa. And we immediately try and hit by, which makes sense.
And yes, chat reminding us Twin Harp came from that, so that could be a big deal for Fly Eagles to eventually pick that one up, seeing as the Twin Harp led to that Earth Crystal. Again, the Harp is a very eminently fadeable check just because of the amount of time it takes to sit through that cutscene. As much as we in chat love hearing it, if you're trying to go quickly, it's not usually the best way.
Yeah. And Cecil finding both a silent staff and the massa for sale in, I believe, the Baron weapon shop, affords them both and leaves himself just under 700 gil.
Cecil, however, still not motivated through the All Gauntlet, and again, not having great area of effect. That being said, I think Edge's Ninja Flame could take him easily through that, but I think Cecil's about ready to give the Moon another shot, or maybe to go peek the Giant. That's another interesting trade-off here. As difficult as Fly Eagle's time had with that Elements fight, that first form Mylon is pretty weak to a Crystal Sword.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, is the first half of that you can get through with the shiny stick, as it is like to be called. And I'm a little... Oh, Crystal Shield, Black Belt, okay. I wasn't sure what we were buying here at the shop, but makes sense.
Well, again, Black Belts cost a fifth of what a Power Shirt does, and they're a fairly hefty bonus. So
Yeah.
really nice value for the for not bad armor to have there.
No. Looks like Eagle's not really having too much of a heart. Well, spoke too soon apparently.
I would say it's not like it's gonna give me, but it looks to be fairly.
Yeah.
This Karate Man. Meanwhile, Cecil on his way to go try his luck on the Giant.
Well, we will see. I mean, we got some levels, have a little bit better equipment, slightly better party probably. Oh, maybe we think we're ready for the imps again? Yeah, that looks like it.
It could be. I mean, the party's a little bit beefier than they used to be. Cecil's getting up there in levels and such, but still, I think that this is going to be a very critical how you manage your blinks. Flyeaglesfly has a second objective ticked off on the board.
Yep. So I think that there's been a lot of really good back and forth here, but I would still give the lead a little bit back to Cecil here after the Sop find and
I don't think you can understate how huge the finding of Crystal is for Cecil in taking the lead in this race, just because it gets him through one of these unpleasant checks that the party's just having trouble getting around. And unfortunately, it's starting to look like the way the seed is laying out, that Cecil's going to end up being more valuable long-term than the Rydia. Despite the large amount of damage that Blard can put out, just the tankiness of Cecil and the individual single target may be enough to help push him through.
Yeah, and it definitely gets you a way to deal with the some of the fights that are real punchy with the cover mechanic and everything.
Well, Cecil in that back row on a normal hit is taking about 2 damage, and that crit is only for about 250. That's going to be extremely helpful for just trying to push through this. But again, it feels like it's going to be close. You know, the interesting thing that we haven't seen, a lot of these seeds have been dropping moon veils, and those are very, very helpful for getting through some of these very punchy spots, because you can effectively put that on someone, have a huge race to their defense, and push through the fight. And so it's interesting because I think that would effectively solve this space for either player, but none of them happen to crop up in this seed.
Yeah. Cecil down to casting heal 2 on himself.
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit concerned about this fight is just quite going the way it needs to for Cecil. It's going to be very, very, very... in fact, him trying to protect Edward, you almost kind of want to see Edward take the hit himself there. I think Cecil also has a lack of potions in inventory leading to these cure casts. But this is, again, getting a little bit hairy.
Yeah, probably, yeah, brought that quorum up, hoping to get the Cure 3 off. Hopefully we, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, this unfortunately is not trending in the right direction. We just have stopped doing damage trying to keep everyone alive. Of course, a full heal on Cecil has actually... That could be a very, very big deal for this, especially when the Dark Imps goes down quickly.
Yeah, and if Quorum can just keep healing Cecil here, the cover mechanic will do the rest of the work for us, as we can see, as long as we can keep him high and not crouching.
Yep. Well, Flyeagles is now making his way up to the moon. Do you think we're going to see another attempt at Cave Bahamut, or do you think somebody's going to take a look at the Mazamune altar for us?
I think we're going to look at the Masa altar. At the very least, we're in troubleshooting mode, and we want to see what the character here is to see what kind of opportunities we may have available to us.
Well, I tell you what, it is incredible watching Cecil work because he is using cover strats with letting his party Cecil. I guess we need to differentiate between runner Cecil and party Cecil to take most of the hits with his high armor, let Quorum arm him, and the rest of the party's being revived so they can participate in the fight.
So, Flyeaglesfly not even really getting the bad news about Hallam, just sort of getting the Cecil we already left behind once and certainly aren't going to go back for now.
Well, and again, interestingly enough, that Cecil was available 20 minutes in when that Darkness Crystal first appeared.
That is fair. I mean, Gleam Runners is quite a long check for a character.
Well,
when you've got a pretty good party.
Cecil doing his best Lunary and Fusoya. Of course, that is where Vanilla Fusoya lives. Flyeaglesfly has decided to walk down to the bottom of the moon. I again reiterate, there are a couple of free bosses we have not seen who could be hanging out here down here just waiting to hand out large and large stacks of experience.
Well, and, there's a lot of bosses we could just make through. They aren't free, but that we could just make it through.
Well, speaking of making it through, Cecil is now through the Dark Imps. There's a fairly large boost of experience there for his trouble. And Excalibur, which will be a very nice start for Edge.
Yeah. We have the party to use the Excalibur. We have Edge.
But absolutely brilliant fight by Cecil. It looked a bit scary in the middle. It managed to find a very good strategy for how to clutch it out.
Yeah, that was, a really good visualization here of why Cecil is one of the preeminent characters in this game, is the amount that you can go through. And we are going straight to the Giant.
Well, I think this is Cecil's first trip here, and I think this will actually be a favorable chance for him here because that Elements fight is not going to do well with Crystal Sword Cecil.
Yeah, no, I think that you're definitely correct, and Cecil will have a much easier time with this Giant.
Well, again, there's a second check coming up here that could have all kinds of dangerous things behind it. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly is working to find out how rude this seed really is.
What is the... I guess we haven't seen Bahamut.
Dark Knight Cecil. I think you want Bahamut or King Queen Eblan here if you're looking for a C check.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we've seen them either.
No, haven't seen King Queen.
This is an interesting check, especially because I don't think I've seen Ice Gear on for either of our runners, and Rubican's counter here is going to be pretty strong magic-wise. This is, of course, the vanilla logo spot, and it is not nice on either magic or attack stats. And unfortunately for Flyeaglesfly, it looks like it's going to be a physical fight here, and that is not going to go well with the high magic that will be given as a response.
Yeah, this is looking rough. This is going to end up being a rough seed, I think.
I still think that they're easier. This is going to be an easier check than that Fey mark. But like I said, an Ice Sword or Spear on Kane would have made this a lot better, and just trying to have Rydia blarg through might be the other answer. This may not be a very fun check for Cecil with the lack of certain things there as well, but he may just have overwhelming power by the time he gets there with the experience he's going to get potentially off Giant, should the Giant 2 not be a terrible check for him. But Cecil is still holding out hope that the other half of Forge is going to appear and taking that last arm chest. Unfortunately, this is going to be an interesting racing time. The amount of damage between Kane and Quorum is going to be enough to be able to carry this fight. Unfortunately, that multi-thousand glare is just unfeasible.
Yep. Need to change course here. So we have Ogo at King, we have Ruby at Masa, we have the Dark Imps at Cave, Bahamut that Cecil has already gotten through. I guess this just comes down to what's behind Elements.
Yeah, well, because I think that, frankly, Cecil is going to have a decent enough path forward. I think he's going to be getting close to the health. Well, I still don't think that this is a fight that you can... The Ruby fight is not necessarily going to be party makeup. With Bahamut, it might be a little bit easier, but for Flyeagles, but again, it requires a bit of a different approach. Flyeagles is going to go looking for experience instead, and is going to check the White Spear altar, where we find Ashura, the ultimate mage.
Yep. Probably not a problem for this party. Get around to Forum, cast Wall, go to town, keep Wall up.
Well, we shall see how well Cecil can do in this fight, but it looks like the elements, the Mylon form of elements has been on the front party, and I think they're mostly out there just as cannon fodder anyway, but a large amount of damage going on Cecil's side right now.
Yep. Get hit by that curse, which makes it a little bit harder, which will override the cover strats, unfortunately. But
well, and not to self-promote too much, if any of you did not catch the previous race between these two teams, it was Noob Tree 87 versus eNinja 81, highly recommend checking it out. There is something ruder in that seed than we have seen tonight. So that's a fun one if you go check it out. Meanwhile, Cecil is down to the second phase of the Elements fight, and Flyeagles making progress against the Ashura.
Yep. It's tough to say whether or not Cecil has managed to quite stabilize here, and with that, Edward going down, our stabilization is looking unsure, but Cecil might still get through this. Decides to reset out, doesn't think that we can.
There's a lot of health there, and unfortunately, one of the things you can do with the Elements fight is if you can put enough damage out in that Rubicon phase, you can avoid seeing the third section of the fight. It's a lot trickier to do in this location, and especially with the party setup we're going to have here.
Yeah, I mean, in this location especially, it has its vanilla hit points, and so it is much harder to get through than it is a lot of other places where you can just see two forms and call it a day.
It does get progressively easier, but again, the first few forms in it tend to be the trickiest in the fight. Flyeaglesfly has decided to go check the ribbon room and finds dolls here in its place. Again, an interesting and obnoxious boss, seeing as even with a full Bahamut from Rydia, it's, I don't think, quite enough to take back all the cows in the back row. And of course, with free bosses turned off, you would have no problem because you could use Hourglass or cast Toad on them, but all of them have been handed the boss bit and are not there. Meanwhile, Cecil into the Ruby phase for a second time of the Elements fight. Let's see if it goes better than it did last time.
So far we've managed to miss Curse on Cecil, which is good. We're going to go ahead and toss our Drain Spear.
And Rydia's Bahamut takes out two of the Calbrina dolls. Of course, one of the other problems with seeing the dolls here, unless you see the big doll here, you then miss experience potentially gained from this spot. So instead of the normal 100k, it's going to be significantly less.
Yeah, so that it works that way in Free Enterprise for all the bosses. So when you see the officer and soldiers too, defense sword and a crystal sword. So no key item.
Well, of course, no key item because K-Moon is off. You're primarily taking that fight for the experience, and so seeing the there is just kind of disheartening because you don't get that experience through things. Cecil has bounced off the Ruby phase again and has decided to try and make his way out, casting Warp to shortcut his way out of the Giant. Well, interesting times, because Cecil knows about this boss. He knows about the Ogopogo and the Feymarch. Do you think it's time to go either hunt the Mazamune altar or to go start looking for that last key item to get Forge? Because frankly, we're starting to get lower on checks. Of course, we don't have the hooks. We can't check that rat tail. We haven't been able to see either of the 2 trap chests that are sitting on the hook route, and neither runner has ventured for Sylph for anything other than bothering Yang.
Yeah,
I don't know. What do you do in this situation?
yeah. I mean, it's a puzzler for sure, and it's I feel like this is one of the situations I would actually see more often in the next flag set coming up. Is bursting ahead and then kind of running out of steam seems to be a problem in Moonveil Mixer, but it looks like Flyeaglesfly is going to try their hand at the Dark Imps here. Probably not a bad play, since it's really just punchy here, no weird gimmicks or tricks to get around.
Well, I'll tell you what, that S I think really stands for So Thought You Potion Party. We all saw that early go mode, Darkness Crystal, and thought, man, it's go mode, this is going to be a quick seed, we're going to be done with it, and then we're moving on. No, sir, we get a lot of Potion Party action tonight.
Yeah, but I think this is a really good kind of seed for our send-off here. Our runners are really close, both extremely skilled, showing a lot of different strategies today to get through some really, really tough fights.
Well, and this is it is a frustrating seed. It's one of those where you're waiting. I thought there would be one thing to break through, but these checks are just so unpleasant. And these runners are not unskilled. Like I mentioned, these are the 2 of the top teams in the tournament right now, and they are fighting. This means an awful lot for both teams, and so both of them are going to be really putting their best effort into it. It is extremely difficult what they're doing.
Yeah, and I don't know if so. Eventually, one of them is, going to finish the seed and we'll get it done. And I don't know if you're going to feel more relief or you're going to feel, pain, because I'm sure that right now they're both panicking, trying to figure out what they can do.
Well, and that's kind of the interesting thing about a race, is you don't know where your opponent is. You don't know what he's checked. You don't quite even know what decisions he's made. And you're just kind of struggling for it. Has he figured out a way past this thing that's blocking me right now? Cecil has decided he's going to go ahead and take another crack at this Ogopogo. And unfortunately, his pawn goes down at the end of the fight. That is not the most auspicious start for this.
No. But if we're kind of hoping to maybe pull off some cover strats, maybe it's not the worst thing.
Well, I know it was hoped for with this Sylph, but I don't think Ogo's going to like it very much.
No. And then a big wave, and that will take care of everybody, unfortunately. I think Eddie would have survived, but...
Well, Flyeagle's chasing some parity here right now, has remembered that he has not gone to visit Yang yet, and is hopefully about to find his We'll see if he's motivated to go check it based on some of the other checks. Cecil's had enough of that Ogopogo and has decided to go look elsewhere.
Yeah, I thought this might be. I think we're doing the chess in here. I think we've decided this is where Predication is.
Well, the nice thing about the chess here is that there's a lot of experience to be had, and especially could be good for Flyeaglesfly if he can get Rydia going fast enough. Interestingly, one of the items chat mentioned as a great shopping list thing for the beginning of the seed was a heroin robe for Rydia. Those did not appear. I think there's about a 62% piece of chance that any given piece of armor will show in the shops, and so not having a heroin robe is a defining factor for this seed. Just that boost on Rydia to let her go early, or even onto Forum to let her throw those blinks early, could have been absolutely huge, and of course the seed said no.
Yeah, I mean, the seed has been very stingy to our runners. I mean, we do have a Cecil with a crystal sword, so it's hard to say, but...
And we have Rydia with Bahamut, but it's just like there are just enough holes. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, a Moonveil would break this seed wide open, and yet it just has not appeared to either of our runners. And I've played several of these potion party seeds where they get handed candy.
Yeah. Yeah, our Zonks have been real Zonks, I would say. that you know, you don't get something that's like, oh, I can have it. We did get the crystal sword, but and the masa, I guess. So, you know, good kind of combat equipment, but just not a lot of utility, I would say.
Well, and Cecil too, excuse me, Flyeaglesfly rather, attempting to get the mute bell out on the ghost, just not quite fast enough to get that in play before it goes off. Of course, the mute bells have found a new life and utility in this flag set. They do absolute wonders against the three ghost traps down here in the Fey March. Cecil making his way down to try that Rubikit, and again, going to be a tricky spot. Now, the other thing that would help with this Ruby fight is some fire elemental resistant gear, which usually comes in the form of an Aegis shield or Dragoon gear, but I don't think we've seen either runner pick any of that up.
No, and I don't think I've seen an Aegis shield anywhere, but there's been a couple Dragoon pieces, but I don't think our runners have them. So, and it looks like you know, we're having a bit of a time against the ghosts here, having not gotten our mute bell off, but not going so poorly for Flyeaglesfly on our first trap chest here.
Well, again, a huge harp here could be very huge. It could be the piece that's needed to get everything on track, especially like you were saying earlier, of getting the getting one of the harps to help anchor Eddie a little better in the party could make a big difference in this seed, because his speed is not helping make any of these fights easier.
Right. Finding some way just to control his agility is always kind of a struggle at the end of these seeds, and there's some Dragoon gloves.
That could be very valuable for helping push Kane through a rough fight where Ruby is casting fire all day.
Yeah, that would be definitely very helpful. Cecil heading down to Rubikit Town.
Again, Cecil can get through this. This represents a fairly substantial experience bump, and might be enough to get him through that elements in the vanilla spot on Giant. But this Ruby fight is not going to be a gimme.
No.
Meanwhile, Flyeagles in the double. Yep, the double maul ball chest, which I think is actually going to be somewhat easier. I think there's enough crystal rings spread amongst this party that it's going to prevent too much unpleasant frogging.
Yeah, so far, nobody's croaked so far, so I think we're looking pretty good, and we are going to life glitch and, you know, make it through our marbles. Not too bad here.
And Cecil takes a bounce off of that Rubikit. Again, this seed, quite the tease. It gives you that go mode, and then in several of those spots has put unpleasant roadblocks.
Yeah,
so I'm interested to see how Cecil does here, because I think Rydia has a great AoE spell to fight these Calbrena dolls. And so in addition to the lowered experience here, there's going to be a much bigger time investment for Cecil.
Yeah, and this may be a case where, you know, it's not always the best, but, you know, maybe you do see Calbrena and you take care of it, and you get all the experience from it at least. Probably not the worst thing in the world.
I don't know. I don't like fighting that big doll due to unpleasant hard hitting that comes with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the easiest thing either, but it's looking easier than Rubicant at Mass Altar. So,
well, Edge is interested in a little bit of Froggy Flambe over by fights the Toad Lady and her tiny toads as well. You know, I did see some interesting lore about the tiny toads, and there was a question of whether the tiny toads were once tiny mages, which raises all sorts of interesting questions about the cultural development in the world of Final Fantasy IV.
I suppose. I think it's just a lady who lives in a swamp with a bunch of toads. They're just very small.
Well, living in the swamp's not terrible. You know, I once knew a man who built a castle in the swamp. A lot of people thought he was daft for it. But he built it anyway, just to show him. But let's not talk about how it sank into the swamp. Anyhow, Cecil resets out of the Calbrena fight, isn't interested in fighting the big doll, but does want to try and get the experience here and is going to give it a second shot.
Yep, and Flyeaglesfly getting through, just picking up a coffin.
Yeah.
Not any value here.
These coffins are actually even worse than the flag set. About the most valuable plays usually, I would say, for a coffin tends to be either against a boss, which are all protected from them with the boss bid, or it's something like a Lunar Alt Gauntlet, which we know we don't have because Senator Crocodile's hanging out in Baron Castle.
Yep. And so at least one of the trap chests hiding inside the Sylph's house here today. And it's a ghost chest. So we'll see if the spell gets off.
You know, it's really throwing me seeing the ghost on this castle background instead of the usual swamp, the usual Sylph Cave swamp background.
Yeah, it almost looks like the wrong Final Fantasy to me in this. Because I'm like, it looks like Final Fantasy 6 to me for some reason.
Well, I don't see anybody that happens to treasure. Not quite sure we're into Final Fantasy 6 territory just yet. Cecil trying to space out his attacks a little better in this fight and actually making use of Rydia and her spellcasting. Again, that interesting choice that the runners have of the Crystal Sword Cecil versus Bahamut Rydia is quite apparent here in how the two runners have to play this. And Flyeaglesfly trying to get a little value out of that Odin. Let's see if he hits. And he does.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Why get hit by Zanzetsuken when you can let Odin do it for you?
That is amazing.
And a very nice sword for Edge, but not quite what we were looking for.
No. Technically an upgrade, but, you know, probably wanted to find that adamant in here.
Well, will we see Flyeaglesfly find and talk to Yang? Not before one more monster box where we have another set of ghosts. Oh, you know that if we saw Odin once, we want to see Odin a second time.
Oh, we do. We do. It looks like Cecil's just going to take the experience here. Maybe we life glitched. Looked like that was
life glitch will not work on this flag set, again, because of the no free bosses business.
Oh.
It will not work against the bosses here. It will work in somewhere like the Sylph Trap Chest that Flyeagles is doing, but you cannot life glitch the bosses with B no free on.
Oh, Cecil has 10 key items. That was the difference.
Well, Odin is showing that he is the god of thunder and rock and roll.
Yep. Getting through those chests pretty handily.
That is incredibly awesome, and I think that's a treat. That being said, the reward was less than what was deserved for that attempted fight. So we see if Yong's interested in a life potion. He is not, and we are off to go find a Twin Harp, I believe. Meanwhile, Cecil is moving on, looking for levels and finding the Ashura. Again, White Spear Altar is not the greatest of experience spot. This seed is not really doing us any favors in handing out freebies.
No.
For generous it was on the front end, it's notoriously stingy on the back half.
Yeah, it's like they hit a wall, and it's not even like it's evil wall holding them back at this point.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah. Just trying to figure out how to work that in. But no, it's been really kind of rough here, and it's interesting to see kind of the different strategies that the runners are using to kind of cope with the fact that we're kind of stuck. We need something to break us open. We need a lucky break on one of our objectives, or a massive influx of experience.
Well, and that's kind of the thing, is normal in a standard flag set, this is where you go farm sirens, this is go through D machines, there's all kinds of other interesting ways to get experience, but that experience flag is on, and you can't go get it that way. We finally have a Moon Veil. That's actually a very, very big pickup. That could be the solution for one of these hard fights for Flyeagle, say getting him through the fight with the Dark Imps up on the moon.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you can probably trade that in for one of several of our fights that we have blocking us.
And I don't know. The problem I think that both our runners are having with the Elements fight is the fire damage and how to hit him when getting hit back. And of course, Ogo is such an unpleasant boss.
Okay, it's just
It's just a combination.
not very nice.
Well, it's a combination of a terribly high physical attack and an unblockable magic attack that, despite power of the space, doesn't really matter. If it's in a bad spot, it hits pretty bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's always gonna, it has that gravity effect. It always does off of full hit points too. Dragon Spear.
Well, I believe this represents the last of the trap chests for Flyeaglesfly over cave, and statistically we should see at least one of them paying out with something. So I mean, based on what we're missing here, I think you're just hoping to see the adamant pop out here for you.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see. It's probably gonna be the hook. I think. I don't think it has to be, but a hook leading to rat tail, leading to adamant, or something like that.
Well, based on what we know, of course, Flyeaglesfly is probably also hoping to see Earth Crystal here. We all know, of course, that's in Magnus. But based on the spots that have been checked, I think once this is clear, we have the 2 spots on the hook route and the rat tail. And I think that's just about everything that's left. And we don't know where to find the pink tail. We don't know where to find the adamant rock. Oh, excuse me, the tower key is the other one. We don't know where the tower key is. We don't know where the adamant rock is. We don't know where the hook is. And so there's a good chance that the terminal items, the adamant rock and the pink tail, are going to be gated behind the hook or the tower key.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Cecil has decided that this is a bit rough too. And again, that clock is ticking. I think the average time you complete a seed in has kind of elapsed, and so you're just kind of sitting here feeling like somebody's got to be breaking through here. I don't think either of our runners, they may suspect how much the other one's struggling with it, but you really can't be sure how much somebody may be breathing down your neck.
So we now know, because we found the pink tail as our item at a Sylph Cave, that you're going to have some business like hook to tower to adamant.
Well, what I'm just wondering is, the check that we have access to that we haven't seen is Sheila too. Yeah. I am almost certain that that's either going to hold the tower key or the hook behind it.
Yeah. It almost has to. I guess we haven't seen the Sand Ruby either, but...
Well, yeah, but I mean, in order for you actually start opening spots in progression, it has to be one of those 2 items.
Yeah. It almost assuredly has to be the hook.
Well, and this also means that Sheila has got value because she's to the Earth Crystal and also be able to get to the Adamant Rock.
Right. Yeah, so like Xenocat's pointing out, it's almost assuredly hook or tower into hook.
Yeah. Well, and I think the odds are that it's more, well, it's hard to say. It depends how Beetle the Steed Escort decided to roll today, which, based on what we're seeing for bosses, we know that he put tower key into hook.
I mean, finding the hook would open up way more spots, but...
Well, so that's why we know Escort didn't do it. That's not how Escort rolled the seed.
I see.
The S stands for certainly not hook.
Maybe the S stands for hook. Maybe that's the whole secret. He stole the hook.
Flyeaglesfly is finally, still not interested in going to talk to Sheila yet. Meanwhile, Cecil going to take another shot at this element spot with a few more levels and see if it's enough to push through.
Yep.
Flyeagles, I think, is about to go give another shot to that Ogo.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's the worst plan. It's going to be rough, but you've got a lot more levels. You're better equipped. Maybe this is the time.
Well, again, there's a bit of a hint of desperation, and I can only imagine the pressure the runners are feeling. Again, this is the rubber match for 2 teams, and the winner stays undefeated and goes into the second half of the tournament as one of the top teams. Now, there's one other pair of undefeated teams that we're playing this week. Because of spoilers and because of distraction, I don't want to talk about it too much, but there will be exactly 2 teams at 4-0 after this week, and this is the fight for the right to be one of them.
Yeah, so... I mean, there's probably just unamountable pressure on our runners, and I actually kind of feel a little bit bad that we've found ourselves in the midst of this, nightmare that we're experiencing here, because I'm sure that, you assume that the other runners had a breakthrough and
that he's got to be close, and that you really just need to pull it together now, because there's no time to dilly-dally around.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
I don't know. And again, that's one of the reasons why we say that both the runners are really fighting and performing pretty admirably. It's why I think they're both worth a follow and a watch for those of you who are there watching. So you can see their names right here on the screen. I believe actually Flyeaglesfly72 is his actual Twitch handle. I believe Cecil races under the name Cecil2, TWO spelled out. Of course, our good friend S-Grunt is, Softenum Mike, extremely talented co-commentator, has already on top of it and putting the links in Twitch chat if you want to go check these runners out, but highly, highly recommend to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I've been around for a while, and I'm still learning things just watching these two race here that, I didn't even think to try or know is possible. So definitely worth a follow if you enjoy this sort of thing. And if you enjoy this sort of thing, come join us in the Discord. It is right here.
Watching Cecil do this fight, I think there's a change in how this is being approached to try and stop triggering the physical attacks from Rubicant, and it is starting to pay off. That being said, there's an unpleasant, massive glare there, but the magic in this spot is not terribly strong, and Edge is, of course, playing a World Series of darts.
Yeah, so...
But, I mean, we're getting to the nitty-gritty of this game, of this seed. No time to hold any of this back. It won't carry over to the next round.
Yeah, and I mean, this whole the Sylph strategy here is great, and I believe the Sylph bug is on, so that Rydia, as long as she's not in the center slot, doesn't actually consume MP to cast Sylph.
Well, again, it's just finding enough time to get through this portion of the fight.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, again, that Ogo Pogo just showing why it's so on spot, but Edge hitting for 4,000. If we get a couple more heals, that might be enough to carry Flyeaglesfly through this fight. Just kind of rooting for Porum and Edge to both hold on here. And every swing by Edge improves the odds. That is probably going to take Porum down, so it's got enough damage to carry the rest of this or not.
Yeah, we'll have to see. 4,000 is...
Ouch.
Oh, oof. That was not... I mean, Edge at full hit points would have survived it, too.
I think that we're going to see Flyeagles push this and get through.
Yeah. Maybe... Yeah, for sure. I think this is just unlucky, and the next attempt will just kind of go through, honestly. And yeah, we're definitely lining ourselves up for the long haul here.
But Escron, you certainly wanted to send us out on a quite the seed.
Yeah. But it does look like that Cecil has stabilized here against elements at least, and so the Fire 3's still hurt, but we're able to kind of stay up and stay through it. It looks like, while we're able to pour a little bit of damage out onto elements. Oh, and
we're into the next section of the fight, and this is actually where things are going to get eaten. Kainatsu in this form is nowhere near as unpleasant as the other spots, and of course, if that Crystal Sword gets going on Cecil in the final section of the fight, an awful lot of weaknesses during the elements form. Meanwhile, Flyeaglesfly is back for another attempt with this Ogo Pogo.
Yep. Ogo Pogo starting out like they normally do with our double wave, kind of a gravity effect where it takes half your hit points.
And a big heads-up play to throw Image by Edge. It's a great way to get up a blink without having to let Porum do the blink cast.
Yep. And our frame rate is such that we can't quite see it, but Ren there is blinked. Oh, there we go. Just
and here comes a nice heal. This is actually a pretty good start to this fight for Flyeaglesfly. I think the way he needs to, and it's just a matter now of just trying to avoid too much damage from Ogo Pogo before Edge can finish knocking him down.
Yeah, and
I'm curious. Go ahead.
I was gonna say Flyeaglesfly using his last Bacchus wine on this, trying to make this breakthrough. Will probably have that influx of experience that we're gonna need to make it through the other two nasty checks.
Well, and here's an Avenger on Kane. Meanwhile, Cecil progressing into the last section of the fight against Spot. A little bit scary going on in the Flyeaglesfly side as Porm is down. It was noted by chat quite a bit earlier, probably an hour and 30 minutes ago or more, that both runners spotted that Ashura in a shop and passed on it. And that was one of the very early shops. Might have been Troy, I think, where we saw that, but it was definitely for sale and available, and it's helpful in a pinch. That being said, I think Eagles is just kind of crossing his fingers and hoping that we can get a turn out of Rydia. And I think he's feeling like he might be close because he's queuing up a Bahamut cast.
Yeah, I think this is a single.
It's not. It's a double, and that's going to take down everybody except for Edward and Rydia.
So Rydia will get Bahamut off. We'll see.
Is it enough?
Yeah. Blarg.
It is enough.
Oh, wow.
Fly. What a fight. He's through and play to get that Bahamut set up. That was just about perfect.
Yeah, we always like to joke about how, you had, 23 hit points is 22 too many, but Flyeaglesfly put every resource he had into that fight and was rewarded here.
You almost have to. That is praiseworthy. That is incredible. Kane is given a nicer weapon for it. Meanwhile, on Cecil's side, he is also through a difficult fight and has made it through the element spot. Very wisely going to go save after the time and effort it took to do through that. But what awfulness did Escrunt put in the second slot here?
I think just to be a tease, it's going to be King Queen.
I have my suspicions about Escrunt and sequel seeds. We'll see if one of them happens to pull through here, because there was a interesting boss placement on the other seed in this match that I've referred to several times, and the boss that was in this slot hasn't appeared yet in this seed. Let's see if it's here again. It's not. It is instead an antlion. However, I think this one is going to be a little bit more doable than the other fights we've been struggling through. And I think we're going to see Cecil's going to have the power to work through this one.
Oh yeah, that counter's not super, kind of punchy, but...
Well, so if you're in Cecil's shoes after this, you're going to be about 2 hours into the seed. You've got 5 out of 6. And you have that unpleasant Ogopogo, you have the Rubicant, and then you have going digging for the last half of Forge, which is significantly easier. And you haven't been to Sylph Cave yet. Where do you go? Or do you even think about that pan that we've been sitting on for such a long time?
Well, I would hope that we would figure out the pan, because the pan's an easy check, and then that's probably the fastest way to winning if that's where you're at. But I think you just have to decide to try and push through one of the other bosses. I don't see starting Sylph at 2 hours in. I mean, Sylph is long.
Yeah, it is. And again, there's that mental pressure of where's my opponent? What are they doing? You can't see what it actually is.
Nope, you can't at all. And it's got to have been distressingly nerve-wracking on our runners. I'm actually starting to feel kind of bad for them here today. It's like I'm rooting for them as much as they are, I think.
Well, I think that they signed up to play a little bit of free enterprise and not get put quite through this ringer.
Yeah.
For those joining us in chat, yes, it has been a rough seed tonight. We had an Ogopogo at the King spot in the Fey March. We had an Elements fight at Giant 1, which has been awful. We've had this terrible Dark Imps fight in Bahamut spot, and if that wasn't enough, we have Rubicant sitting at the Mazamune altar throwing unpleasant things. We hit in go mode in the first half hour seed out, and it has been nothing but punishment ever since.
Yeah.
Noticed that a lot of the unpleasant roadblocks, like we have Rydia the best black mage here, we have a great white mage in form, we have Cecil with a crystal sword, we have a Kane with an Avenger, we have Spoonward, all of these wonderful tools, and it's not enough for the awfulness that has been placed in front of us.
Yeah, but it's worth it to note that at this point, But betwixt our runners, we have been through everything except for the Mouse Altar.
Yeah.
And then we need to finish this antlion to get credit for the fight that we just won before. But, yeah, so... Oh, and it looks like the Dark Imps are being a little bit unkind, or possibly our Berserkers are choosing really poor targets.
Yeah, this was the spot where I think Cecil got through because of the power of his party, Cecil being able to cover. And I love Kane, but he's just not able to carry that kind of load.
No, I mean, I like Kane too, but Kane is just not Cecil. Cecil's probably the best character in the game, but, you know.
That's a subjective measure, and it really depends what you got. If you want, like, in-seat effectiveness, maybe Cecil's the greatest character in the game. But I mean, come on, if you're into hardcore betrayal, there's nobody to match my boy Kane.
Okay.
That's what we're all here for, right?
I mean, it seems to be what most people are actually here for, yes, is to see the restreamer betray the runners. Which, you know.
Well, I've floated before. I keep being told the S does not stand for sudden yet evident betrayal, but I have my doubts. The antlion has gotten the best of Cecil the Runner, and I think we're going to see another attempt, though. At this point, you kind of have to get through somewhere.
Yeah. I at this point, I don't know what else you do. You're gonna get. I would give this a second go at least. I'd probably give it a third. You're up here. You're never gonna want to come back.
So let's talk a little bit about that, Edward. Sometimes there are some bugs that can affect action. Sometimes it's agility, but also, depending on the order of how a character is berserked, it's possible for a character to get stuck in the queue. And that has to do with trying to input an action that's trying to input the berserk about the same time that a action is being queued that doesn't play well with it, or even worse, having an adventure at the wrong time. But I think with the fact that Edward did snap out of it, that's a good sign for Flyeaglesfly, who is actually now through this. So good for him. That is a fourth objective. It's going to temporarily get parity with Cecil. But again, Flyeaglesfly is going to have to make up those last two checks. And again, the options here just aren't very pleasant.
Right. No. Somebody in chat asking, where the adamant is going to be. It's almost inevitably behind a very large fetch quest, given what we know about this.
Yeah, but based on how awful this giant has been, that's a preferable fetch quest to doing it. But, I mean, that being said, Flyeaglesfly still has not even tried to turn in the Yang check and with Sheila 1, which leads to that Earth Crystal. And we put him a lot closer to go mode. I think he's going to go ahead and try his luck with that Rubicant again.
Yeah, I think that's what you're doing here. You've gotten through, two of the major fights that we've been saying are major blockers. And Cecil gets through the antlion on the second time in much quicker fashion.
And that is one objective from seed completion and a victory for Cecil. We'll see who our character is on Giant. We have, of course, seen all 7 characters. This would probably be a good opportunity for Cecil to appear again. He's shown up several times already.
Yeah. I would call it as Cecil if it were Flyeaglesfly who did not pick up Cecil, just to keep taunting him that he didn't. But,
well, you have to admit, Flyeaglesfly is leaning to that old adage of commit to your fates. I don't think Flyeaglesfly has even thought to go back to ordeals.
Oh no, I don't think you do that at all. But we'll have to see. Yeah, we're definitely walking down here. Gonna give old Ruby another shot.
Unsurprisingly, Cecil lets the Quack Kid go, and now he has a choice because he can go chasing after his harp, or he can go off to do Ruby. And it looks like he wants to get his ship. He may go chase his pan, not his harp. It may finally be time for him to go after that pan. He's going to find a bit of a quest, but I think that based on the frustration it's been up to this point, that may not be a bad option.
So from Cecil's point of view, you can go bash your head against Ruby, you can go bash your head against Ogo, or you can go find the adamant.
Oh,
which,
that's right, but Cecil hasn't done Sylph Cave. Thinking about it, but I think actually weighing Sylph Cave versus checking Ogo, this could also
Okay.
be another full Sylph Cave clear, which would give an opportunity for Flyeaglesfly to get back in the race.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. We move float up on our white magic menu. This is what we're doing.
Well, interesting.
Maybe
Wow.
we changed our mind.
We may have just realized we have not cashed that harp in yet. No, we're floating. I think we're going to take at least some chests. And if I remember right, actually, I say that there's not a whole lot of value to be found here. It's that pan that's really should be burning the hole in the pocket. But I think if we're going to check all 7, that's going to be some extra time for Fly Eagles through the seed.
Yeah, and I mean, Fly Eagles is, several of the tougher fights down. May do this and then Giant, but that's not going to be too bad for Flyeaglesfly's levels at this point.
No.
But, I mean, I think Cecil's going to do both. We're going to kind of zonk out of the chests. I do think Cecil's going to have a much faster time here, though. We are twice the level that Flyeaglesfly was when we were here.
Yeah, well, yeah, you say that. Flyeaglesfly had a lot better area of effect magic, though, but we'll see what Cecil can do. That being said, looks like Flyeaglesfly has decided to throw all the dartables with Edge at this Rubicant. I think that's going to get him through the fight between that and a couple of Bahamut casts, just getting more power for the future, for the Yogo check, and then for also the Dark Imps is going to start paying off in spades here.
Yeah, I mean, we've pretty much caught up in levels, it looks like, between Flyeaglesfly and Cecil. Flyeaglesfly just getting that influx of experience here. And it is looking to be getting tied up very soon.
Well, I've seen 14k just by darts off of Edge, so we just got to hope the berserking shots here, and unfortunately taking out our Bahamut caster is not going to help this. This is going to be a very, very close fight.
Yeah, we were doing a little thinking there.
Well, Kane has still got that Avenger turned on, I think, so we're going to...
Oh.
But then again, that Ruby's starting to get close. And those cures from Porum are just going to keep it going. Edge coming through with 10 hit points.
10 hit points.
Cecil continuing to check the trap chest, hoping to spike that adamant rock that we know is not here. And unfortunately, Edge does not survive that. And Kane pulls it out.
I lost now, but I shall return.
The ultimate betrayal of letting Edge down and then winning. But that puts Flyeaglesfly one objective away from victory as well. And we, folks, despite 2 hours and 8 minutes of craziness, have a race on. And an X-Cal, which is another dart. Does that give you enough confidence as Flyeaglesfly to go give another shot to the Elements fight?
I don't see any other option for Flyeaglesfly. I think you go out and you commit to that. I think you're committed to it at this point.
Well, I mean, the appealing thing is, unlike all this other checking, you know it's there and you know it can be beat. It's difficult, but it's a way to get you through. And versus who knows how deep you have to check. If the adamant rock is going to be buried, say, behind the hook and then the tower key, or if or even that your earth crystal is going to be buried behind harp which is behind the pan, or behind Sheila 1 anyway. Yeah,
this is going to pay off. It's a known quantity. There's only so much that can be behind the elements. I mean, there's probably like Baigan, but there's some DKC. I mean, but still.
And here we go for a giant play.
Yep. And Cecil seems to be making very, very short work of the ghost chests here. Not stylishly cutting them in half like his opponent, but, still getting through.
Yeah. As Xenocat is pointing out in chat, the 2 checks that Flyeagles has left that he can legally make are the Sheila 1 check, which will lead him ultimately to the Earth Crystal, and then the and then the ordeals check, which will bring us into Baron Key. And I believe the Baron Key is where the harp came from. Or excuse me, not the harp, the pan rather came from.
Yeah, I think through Baron is the pan.
But yeah, if Flyeagles can get through here, this could be especially because he's going to get some time busy checking these trap chests. If Cecil goes in and checks that other pan check, this could tighten up. But again, that's going to be a long chain, and so it's anybody's race right now. Oh, the Baron Key, excuse me, was a complete waste of time. All right, well, we'll see if Eagles going to take advantage of. If we can find a better get through this check.
Yeah. I bet with these extra levels that we're just not going to have as hard a time with it, but we'll have to see.
Well, we are getting our money's worth out of the seat tonight. Holy folk.
Yeah, it's been quite the race, and it's been quite back and forth, and honestly, like, I've been at the edge of my seat for, over 2 hours now as the runners have traded the lead and really kind of put on the greatest show here tonight for us.
Oh, that Kane has a white spear. He's Avenger glitching in here. This could make this a much better fight against the Mylon form here. The Mylon horse being weak to Holy. Well, while we have a little bit of time where runners are doing checks, we see, give a shout out to our special restream team. I highly recommend follows for everybody. Eskrent, our lead restreamer, is of course a fun runner who actually designs a lot of interesting clubs, so a lot of fun to watch out there. Ryoto RPG, fairly new in the free enterprise community, up and coming, but a lot of fun channel to watch. I've been there a few times, you should be too. Sofnum, who is of course competing in the tournament, who I got to spy a little bit today. He's a lot of fun, and if you're bored, my channel is something.
Yeah, for sure. Check out Toggart's channel. It's a little bit better than something. Great people to hang out with.
Well, and I'm being corrected that Mylon is actually weak to fire, not to Holy. So, at least in this form. So, we'll see what comes in. Of course, almost everything is weak to Blarg, and I'm suspecting Mylon won't be an example. Flyeagle's going to go ahead and throw as much as he can with Edge just to get through this fight. Make sure it can get done. And we're into the Ruby phase.
Already at 10k on this fight too, which is pretty amazing, really. And a Blarg comes out.
Well, that's actually a well-timed Blarg. Probably the most painful of this entire fight is the phase, and we crunched about half of it through that one cast. So what we're going to hope is that a well-placed dart will get us past this point. Edge saying the second Mura sword that I was holding doesn't need to be re-equipped with my Mazamune, and it is going to be thrown at Ruby.
Nope. And
I think the second Bahamut cast is going to put Flyeagles in a very good spot for this fight. Meanwhile, Cecil continues to check.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this has been a awful seed, and it's quite a slog, and I'm sure absolutely drained by this point. This has been an awful lot of work.
Yeah, and I mean, they've each been ahead roughly half the seed too, so it's going to be heartbreaking to lose this one here. And Cecil getting the news about the pink tail, and apparently I am being told by chat, did miss it myself, that we didn't actually. I think we might be remembering here
that the pan has not been checked, or that we're going to consider going to fight the Yoga.
I thought we were going to go see if we had the pan, because apparently we did not pan Yang. So
no, we have not. And we're looking at our thing and realize I think we just had that moment of realization that went off. But the question is that ultimately this is going to be an easier check, but we are guaranteed to have at least one step in the chain here. How deep is that adamant rock going to be buried, and is it going to be enough time to slow down Flyeaglesfly, or to overtake Flyeaglesfly rather?
Well, and if it's the hook, which it almost surely has to be Tarky and the hook, I think we determined, but if it's the hook, that opens up some Zogs. I mean, you have 3 ways to go now.
Well, that's the other thing, though, is early on, Cecil was prioritizing the key item checks, and he has a lot of things that Flyeagles didn't fly. He never got the Earth Crystal. Flyeagles never saw the Earth Crystal, hasn't seen the Harp, hasn't seen the Baron Key. The thing is, Cecil doesn't have that rat tail. It's very possible that Adamant is locked behind the rat tail, and that could be a problem. Which, that being said, I take it back. I believe Cecil actually does have the rat tail, though. I think he found that. That rat tail was up in the upper Babel, if I remember correctly. So that may not be correct. If Sheila gives the hook and then the rat tail has the adamant, then this could be right back in Cecil's lap.
Yeah, I mean, and
he reset out of the rat tail. Oh no.
Oh no.
Well, how well do you remember which chest it was in?
I'm sure that that's something that we are sort of kicking ourselves for, but let's see what we've got here. Yep. It was basically what it had to be. So do you go back and grab the rat tail?
Or you just go ahead and yeah,
or you
well,
check the trash chest, right?
I think though that this is advantage Flyeaglesfly, because the one thing that Flyeagles is going to have that Cecil did not have for this antlion fight is Bahamut, and that's going to make the fight infinitely easier on the Flyeaglesfly side. I think that he's going to be through this the first time. But again, it's been going for 2 hours 15. Your opponent hasn't finished. You're both feeling the pressure. You've got to make that play, and I think Cecil's going to try and do the absolute fastest thing he can come up with.
Yeah, and Flyeaglesfly just has basically one antlion away from victory here.
I take it back. Cecil is remembering, and we've all forgotten that nobody's actually checked through Baron. Cecil saw the alt gauntlet and stepped back out.
Oh.
I had completely forgotten about that.
Yeah, I had crossed it off once we had gone, because I assumed we had.
That means that Adam Rock could have been sitting here the whole time.
Oh. I don't know.
It could looking at on right here. That is unbelievably scary. I
think that killing antlion's faster than this.
I think with the cutscene here with Blarg, I think it's Flyeagles' race to lose at this point.
Yeah, I think that we have to take a life at antlion for Cecil to be back in this.
Yeah, Adamant could have been that turned into.
Yep. And now you're remembering it's the alt gauntlet, I bet.
Well, he knew it was the alt gauntlet. He came here and did the first fight and then decided to reset out. And unfortunately, we're still carrying the lack of life from the Sylph Cave check, but I don't think it's going to be a problem with the levels. We are so much faster than this alt gauntlet.
Yeah.
Flyeagles wasting no time. We have a very angry dragon coming, googly eyes.
Yeah. So, and it looks like we're stabilizing at a lot higher life and party member total here than we were able to on Cecil's side when we got through the antlion. So
yeah, well, this is actually not a terrible spot for the alt gauntlet. It's actually pretty weak. It's just time consuming, and I think that's why Cecil reset out of it the first time.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna burn so much time here, but at this point you have to choose what you're gonna burn time on. You have to make plays. So
well,
it makes sense.
Antlion's not ready to give up the drama and takes Rydia down to make this fight a little more complicated for Flyeaglesfly.
Yep.
But Flyeaglesfly is through, and I think we are about to see a GG here, folks.
And as we get ready to congratulate Flyeaglesfly, Cecil is one more fight on this alt gauntlet, and then we through to the other fights. Getting the news about Palom, and let's see here.
Well, folks, quite a slog tonight, quite a rude seed, and quite a send-off to the potion party of the tournament. But your winner tonight for the Blue Moon Dew team, Flyeaglesfly72. with a time of 2 hours and 20 minutes. Excuse me, 2:19:46. Excuse me. So GG's to Flyeaglesfly.
To Flyeaglesfly.
That was quite a run and quite a seed, and we will see if we can get Fly Eagles in for an interview. I'm not sure how our runners are doing right now, because that's been, we're looking at 140 minutes of unpleasantness that we've sat through.
Yeah.
But we'll see what we can do.
Yep.
And that sign tells me we are joined by tonight's winner, Flyeaglesfly. To GG's.
Thank you on that one. Whew. Team 98, tough one.
Well, I want to hear your thoughts on the seed, but I even more want to hear your thoughts about Cecil, because you had several opportunities to see him, what turned out to be relatively early, and you took a hard pass. What were you thinking?
So going through it, I saw him come through, and knowing that I would have to go back to do ordeals, my gut was telling me, hey, you got your team. It's going to be a great team. Once you find that spoon for Eddie, it'll be an awesome team, and you will knock them out. So there's no need to get Cecil.
Did you have? Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that makes a lot of sense. So, I think as you went through the seed, what went through your mind as check after check kind of became a zonk, right? Like, what was your plan then?
So going through, I was trying to avoid Stealth Cave most of the way through. But then, when I went down, seeing who the king and queen were, I was like, oh, it's a moon boss. Hopefully it could be Plague and be a nice, easy fight there. And ended up turning to be Ogo Pogo and just knocking me out. And I didn't even think to go try Yang in the queen spot. So my mind was like, where do I need to go to get some levels? So just wandering around doing some boss fights to try to get some kind of levels. Then when I went over to the moon, seeing we had the 3 dark imps at Bahamut Cave, and they were just knocking me out. I figured, let me go down to the Masamune altar, and then seeing Rubicante there, it's like, ugh, where now can I get levels? And that's where my mind was like, hey, Self Cave, you got those monster chests, go there. And I was thinking either one of us going to Self Cave, that was going to be the play to try to win the match at least.
Well, did you ever have much of a thought to go talk to Sheila about what she might have for you?
My mind was telling me to do that, and a lot of runs that I've been doing in this potion seed, I've done that, and she gave me the runaround. It was like, go here, go there, and I would just follow that path, and it added more time. So seeing that, I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to check Sheila. I'm going to get the levels and just knock out the objectives that I can get done.
Well, and Rydia sure came through for you tonight. Would you call her the MVP of your team?
From this one, I would say tonight, yeah, definitely. That was like an MVP run to help out the team to get the second win to win the match against the team. So it's kind of like sitting there worried a little bit, but my whole team, we all root each other on. We help each other out during the times when we're off, doing practice seeds. So we kind of work through together. So everybody on Blue Moon we all are considered MVPs.
Well, you guys certainly did come through, and I believe this puts Blue Moon Dew at 4-0 Potion Party stage of this tournament. What do you guys have in mind for the Moonveil Mixer stage coming up?
Seeing the Moonveil Mixer stage, it's back to normal to get to the Z fight and getting the crystals. So looking at that, my teammates have been practicing on that. But for me, it's back to normal from running Free Enterprise a lot and being in the Adamant Cup and having these objectives to get the crystal to go fight Zeramos. So it's back to normal. But I'm looking forward to practicing a little bit tomorrow to get a couple seeds under my belt to get back to normal.
well, Softenham, do you have anything else for our winner tonight?
No, I don't have any other questions. I just do want to say good game, and it was a great show that you and Cecil put on, and so thank you for running for us tonight.
Yeah, and do you have any final thoughts for us tonight, Eagles?
Nothing much, but I just want to thank you, Cecil, too, for this match, putting on a great show tonight. Also, thank you, Softenham and Tall Grant for commentating, and S Grant for the restream, and what you do for the track, and appreciate you all for doing that. And whoever created this seed, thank you for this horrible seed.
I think you can shake your fist at S Grunt. He certainly gave you a lot of hope early and then crushed it later. All right, folks. There are a couple of other matches that are going on out there that have actually already occurred today. We do try to keep a little bit of a moratorium on it for the folks who have not had a chance to watch it. There are, of course, some great VODs out there. So we would highly encourage you to watch that. In the meantime, we are joined with Cecil 2. GG's tonight, Cecil. That was quite the ordeal. And Cecil, I think you're muted.
Yeah, it's like
Remind me when I want a tough seed, talk to S. Grunt.
Yeah, he certainly gave you a lot of false hope and then crushed it with that early darkness crystal. What's going through your mind when you're in go mode 30 minutes in? Or supposedly in go mode 30 minutes in?
That there was no way it would be that easy.
Oh, so you knew this was coming.
That's why I hit Baron last. Because there's no way it's this easy.
Yeah, and unfortunately that burned you because the ultimate finish there was pretty close. I think you guys were about 3 minutes apart, and that Baron check could have saved you a lot of effort because the full Sylph clear went in front of it. So what were your thoughts when you saw that Cecil? Because it looked like as soon as you had him, you dropped everything and went up to Ordeals to power him up.
Yes, because I already had pulled a crystal sword out of Eblan.
yeah. So, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, once I pulled that crystal sword and then pulled that Cecil, I was like, I know what I'm doing.
So was there ever any thought to go back and attempt to take on that Ogopogo once you had gotten through the wreck of that was the giant up there?
I had made several attempts. If Baron didn't have anything, I was going to make one last attempt at it.
Well, and yeah, we did see some great plays from you. I think you were the first one actually to get through the giant, and it was actually the real brilliant fight I saw on your part was the Dark Imps fight, because you took absolute full advantage of Cecil and its cover strat. What were you thinking as you started putting that one together?
Actually, Rybon's been giving me tips here and there, and that was one of the things he told me to remember was back row Cecil, then cover strats.
Well, it paid off and got you through a very difficult fight, and quite a bit earlier than Flyeagles was able to. And just absolutely brilliant, and taking advantage of the fact that you had that Cecil and you had those extra abilities, and just not using him as a big guy with a stick, or a big guy with a big stick rather.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw it or not, during the Elements fight, I was attempting reflex strats, but the radio was just getting hit too hard.
Yeah, there was a whole lot of unpleasant hitting fights, and I think both of you would have loved to have found a heroin rope available. That would have made life a lot better. But the gods of randomness decided that was not in the cards for you tonight.
Yep.
Well, this is the last race we had at Potion Party. What do you have in mind for the Moonveil Mixer portion of things coming up? Do you have anything special in mind for how you're going to prepare for that?
Not really. It seems like a more advanced version of Blue Moon to me, so I'll just be doing that.
Yeah, well, I think we're all looking forward to how that goes for all the teams in the tournament. So I did want to ask about. You did keep Rydia the whole time. Is there a reason you didn't go back? Did you ever think about going back and getting some of the summons, or?
I had thought about it. It probably bit me in the backside, but at the same time, I know my Porum was really slow, and having two healers just made a lot of things easier between Edward with his spoon and Cecil with his crystal sword. And I was extremely disappointed with Edge.
Yeah, for a guy that had two fancy ninja swords, he was not really carrying the load you'd expect.
Yeah, that's why I was getting ready to start throwing him at everything I could.
Yeah, I mean that seemed to be his best use, is just throwing things out of your inventory as fast as he could. So, Tallgrant, any other questions for Cecil here?
I don't. I do want to wish you the best of luck going forward in the tournament. Of course, this means your team is only 3-1, but 3-1 is still pretty upper half the tournament. You've got quite a bit in front of you. You have any final thoughts for what you're going to be doing going forward?
Hopefully a couple more easier seats.
Well, I would recommend staying away from S-Grunt if you want to keep rolling that, because he did you no favors tonight. But you showed a lot of skill, you showed a lot of grit, and a lot of determination. That was probably one of the longest races of the tournament, and you pushed right through it. So again, GG's, we were very grateful for you to put on the show for us.
Was yesterday or the day before the second longest after this one?
I know that there was a 2-hour one that was between a couple of folks, one of which was on my team with Beauty and Discovery, that involved a unpleasant Kanatsu at the Mazamune altar that I think was longer than the one yesterday, but it was not longer than the one today. But this is, you guys got to work for it. You guys got to earn it. So, all right. Well, GG's. That's Cecil2, or Cecil rather. Follow him on twitch.tv at Cecil2. Anyway, folks, I think that wraps us up for tonight. We are going to raid you over, I believe, to VT Afro, who's doing some Moonveil Mixer practice. I would remind everybody not to mention any spoilers from this race or any of the other ones that may have occurred today. There may be folks there who may be waiting to watch the restreams. And of course, keep your eyes open on Free Enterprise. Starting as potentially early as Tuesday, 2 days from now, we will be beginning the Moonveil Mixer part of the tournament. Good night, everybody.
Good night.